Chapter 3163. 3163, blocking the doorway. Chapter 3163. 3163, blocking the doorway. 3163, blocking the doorway. Ling Han put away the newly refined formation foundations and left the old one in the shop. Niu Huaqing said that he wanted to take a look. In any case, it was made of wood and was already slightly damaged, because stimulating the power of heaven and earth itself was a massive pressure. So how could ordinary wood possibly bear it? He had always been a man of his word. Thus, after leaving the formation shop, he walked towards the Formations Association. It didn't matter if he didn't know the way. He could just ask anyone, as the Formations Association was quite well known. There were locomotives in the city that they could ride, although their speed was not as fast as when Ling Han was sprinting at full speed. Firstly, Ling Han was not in a rush, and secondly, there was no need for him to exert himself either, so why not take a ride? Traveling by carriage to the Formations Association required 2 dark North coins, which wasn't cheap. After Ling Han paid, he climbed down from the car and looked ahead. In front of him was the Formations Association. This was a massive building. First, there was a flight of stairs, which was as tall as 2 floors. Then there was a white-colored hall, which was supported by massive pillars, making for a very grand sight. There was practically no one entering or leaving this place. If it was not for the fact that there were 4 guards standing at the top of the steps, one would really wonder if this was a haunted house. Ling Han ascended the stairs, and very soon he had finished his journey. However, he was also stopped by those 4 people. "Who are you? What business do you have here?" one of them asked, appearing to cherish his words like they were gold. Ling Han smiled and said, "My name is Ling Han, and I have come here to find a person called Gu Tianhe. There is this person, right?" "Yes, how could there not be? That person was the boss of this place." The 4 guards exchanged looks. "Had you taken the wrong medicine, brat? Coming here to ask if there was a person called Chairperson Gu here." "Hee, you want to see our chairperson?" one of the guards asked, chuckling. What? Gu Tianhe was actually the chairperson of the Formations Association. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Could it be that he had been tricked by that old geezer? He actually called Gu Tianhe a brat, making him think that he was a minor character in the Formations Association. However, he was entrusted with a task, and being loyal, he continued, "Please report this to Chairperson Gu, and tell him that I was, sent by the boss of there's a formation shop." "Pooh!" The 4 guards almost spluttered in laughter. How many formations shops were there in the city? Which one had sent you here? You can't even speak properly, and yet you still want to see the chairperson. Ling Han felt more and more like he had been screwed over by the old geezer. Wouldn't giving the shop such a strange name deliberately cause misunderstanding? "That formation shop is called There's a Formation Shop," he said. "I'll have to trouble the 4 of you to pass on the message. Whether Chairperson Gu will meet me or not, it is up to him. I am not asking for too much." He had only come to help Niu Huaqing. Now that he had arrived and the message had been passed on, his mission was completed. As for the rest, he didn't care. "Apologies. Chairperson Gu is busy with many matters, and we dare not disturb him." The 4 guards all said thus. What a joke! If everyone wanted to see Chairperson Gu, and they all went to make a report, then wouldn't Chairperson Gu be pestered to death? How would he still have the time to study formations? "Please leave." They wanted to chase Ling Han away. If these 4 people had gone to relay the message, and Gu Tianhe did not want to meet him, then Ling Han would not have continued to pester them. Instead, he would directly turn around and leave. However, since they did not proceed to report, then Ling Han felt like he had not completed his mission. Thus, he argued strongly, asking the 4 of them to make an exception. No matter what, he had to deliver the message. "What's the matter? Why are you making so much noise here?" A young man walked out of the great hall. He was dressed all in white and had an elegant bearing. "Young Master June." The 4 guards hurriedly paid their respects, their expressions incredibly respectful. This was Yen Jun, young Master Jun. His natural talent in formations was incredibly outstanding, and he was acclaimed as a formations prodigy that would only appear once every 10 years. He was taken as disciple by Attendant Liu, and had already become an elementary level formation master in his early 20s. A formation master, having the title of master, was already something. There was another young man by Yen Jun's side. His name was Yang Ziqing, and he was a young master of the Yang clan, a preeminent clan in the city. He had deliberately come to find Yen Jun to ask him to create a formation for him. This is the Formations Association, after all, not a marketplace. Yang Ziqing said in a haughty tone. Really, did they think that just about anyone was qualified to enter here? Wouldn't that lower his status as well? Ling Han looked towards Yang Ziqing. Though the 4 guards had been rejecting him previously, at least their attitude wasn't too bad. Thus, he did not get angry, but Yang Ziqing's attitude made him extremely displeased. "What do you think you are?" he retorted directly. "You dare insult me?" Yang Ziqing was furious. "Oh, so you're not a thing then?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Be at start." Yang Ziqing stomped his feet, angered by Ling Han's words. "Young Master Jun, it's like this," one of the guards explained. "This person's name is Ling Han, and he requests an audience with the chairperson." Ling Han. Yen Jun felt a jolt in his mind. He didn't hear anything that the guard said after that. This person was Ling Han. He looked at Ling Han and asked, "Are you Ling Han of Shenqing Banner?" This guy knew him. "That's right." Ling Han nodded. Yen Jun instantly revealed a menacing, killing intent. This brat actually dared to snatch his woman. Most importantly, he had been pursuing Lien Xiaorong for 1 or 2 years, but Lien Xiaorong had always treated him coldly. But now, Lien Xiaorong not only gifted things to Ling Han, but also publicly covered for him. "Fuck!" Yang Ziqing was observant and immediately said, "Brat, this is not a place for you to behave atrociously. If you still don't get lost, I will not be polite to you." Ling Han glanced at him. "You still want to use force?" "We're not going to use force. We're just here to maintain order," Yang Ziqing said coldly. Seeing that Yang Ziqing had taken the initiative to jump out, Yen Jun did not speak further. He wanted to kill Ling Han, but no matter how courageous he was, he would not dare to commit murder in public in the city. The nation had its laws. If the other party was not a wanted criminal, then incapacitating or causing even death to the other, one would also have to pay a huge price for it as well. Thus, if Yang Ziqing jumped out now, he would also be happy to have him take the vanguard and teach Ling Han a lesson. Of course, he would definitely think of a way to kill Ling Han later. He could not tolerate having another man in the heart of the woman he loved. Scram! Yang Ziqing made a move and delivered a slap at Ling Han. He was in 11 meridians. The power of this attack was profound, and the strong wind generated caused the 4 guards to tremble, almost tripping over. Anger appeared on Ling Han's face. Who had he offended? He could tell that Yen Jun had a strong animosity towards him, and this Yang Ziqing was bootlicking him, so he hurriedly jumped out. Did he think he was an easy target to bully? Ling Han also delivered a slap. Pa! The force that Yang Ziqing had delivered was instantly disintegrated, and the power of Ling Han's strike did not decrease and landed heavily on Yang Ziqing's face. Ah! Yang Ziqing released a pained groan, and a red palm print instantly appeared on his face. He was stupefied. He was in 11 meridians, and only at 12 meridians could slap him as they pleased. This guy looked so young, but was actually an elite of 12 meridians. He really could not believe it. Otherwise, he would not have been in such a haste to make his move. Chapter 3164. 3164 Countermove and Checkmate. Chapter 3164. 31-64 countermove and checkmate. 31-64 countermove and checkmate. Ling Han, you actually dare to be insolent in front of the Formations Association. How dare you? Yan Jun spoke up, directly assigning a crime to Ling Han. Ling Han looked at Yan Jun and said, "Strange. I've never seen a be at starred like you before. Why are you biting me and not letting go?" He had just arrived at Huju City and didn't seem to have activated his halo of trouble. How did he become the target of others? Fuck, be it starred. Yan Jun looked furious. Was this brat mocking him? His woman had been snatched by the other party, so what else could he be but a be at starred? Very well. You clearly know that Lien Xiaorong is my woman, yet you still dare to make a move. I'll kill you. Humph, you barged into our association and even committed a crime. Do you know how serious the crime is? He asked menacingly. Ling Han laughed loudly. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak irresponsibly. Who saw me barge in? However, there was a mad dog that wanted to bite me, so I gave it a kick to stop it from committing a crime. Yang Ziqing was taken aback. Fuck, this guy actually called him a mad dog. Get lost. How could the chairperson possibly see a reckless fool like you? Yan Jun waved his hand dismissively. It was impossible for him to kill Ling Han here. He could only humiliate him a little. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Oh, so you can represent Chairperson Gu." These words were a little harsh. Gu Tianhe was a high-level formation master, and even the city lord had to treat him with respect. What right did Yan Jun have to represent such a mighty figure? Yan Jun humphed. If any random person could pay respects to the chairperson, then wouldn't the chairperson be so busy to death? I am only screening on his behalf. You are not worthy. It's none of your business whether I'm worthy or not. All I want is to relay the message, Ling Han said calmly. Humph, country bumpkin scram. Yan Jun said disdainfully. He hoped that Ling Han would leave as soon as possible. Then he would find out where Ling Han lived, and then hire an assassin to make Ling Han disappear forever. Hee, you're overthinking things. Ling Han ignored him. He would stand guard here, and he was sure that Gu Tianhe would definitely come out. At that time, he only had to relay Niu Huaqing's words to him, and the latter would be able to see him if he wanted to. If he didn't want to see him, then he would leave. It was a very simple matter. Yan Jun smiled coldly, still not giving up? If the chairperson is willing to meet a country bumpkin like you, then the sun must have risen from the west. Ling Han ignored him. He didn't know this guy, and if they wanted a fight, he would oblige. Seeing Ling Han ignore him, Yan Jun couldn't help but feel even more furious. This brat was actually putting on airs. Was he deliberately provoking him? Damn it. Guards, send him out, he demanded coldly. He was an elementary-level formations master and had boundless future prospects. The 4 guards were naturally very reverent towards him, and when they heard this, they all looked towards Ling Han. Please do not make things difficult for us, one of the guards said. Ling Han cracked a smile. I have a matter which required me to seek an audience with the chairperson. It's fine if you guys don't announce it on my behalf, but you actually want to chase me away? I really want to see just how overbearing the Formations Association is. Oh, you really want someone to help you make your report? Yan Jun revealed a cold smile. All right, I can help you inform the chairperson. Had this guy taken the wrong medicine? To say nothing of Ling Han's disbelief, even the 4 guards and Yang Ziqing wore expressions of confusion. What the hell was this? However, you have to crawl between my legs first. Yan Jun's legs separated slightly, his expression filled with disdain. If it was the large black dog, he would definitely agree first. Then he would pretend that he was going to worm his way in and take advantage of the opening to make a move. Yes, he would have a vicious mouth and bite Yan Jun's bee at LLS to pieces. However, Ling Han wouldn't be so tasteless. He merely looked at Yan Jun, his heart filled with confusion. How exactly had he provoked this guy? Though he had indeed activated the halo of trouble, which had an automatic effect of causing him to be taunted. But this was really too baffling. He had just arrived and barely knew anyone, yet was actually treated with such animosity and hatred. Strange. But no matter what, his principles were very simple. He would thrash whoever dared to trifle with him. This Yan Jun had already been blacklisted by him. What's with all the noise? A deep voice was heard from within the great hall, filled with authority. Subsequently, an old man walked out. Though his figure was slightly thin, he was hale and hearty in spirit. Chairperson. When Yan Jun and the others saw him, they hurriedly bowed in respect. Gu Tianhe, the chairman of Huju City's Formations Association, a high-level formation master. He held an astounding position and enjoyed a lofty status. The man of the hour had arrived. Ling Han hurriedly said, Chairperson Gu, I've been entrusted by the boss of There's a Formation Shop to seek an audience with you. This brat, not only did he not pay his respects when he saw Gu Tianhe, he actually said such inappropriate words. Yang Ziqing and the others were confused, while Yan Jun smirked coldly. Very good. If he offended Gu Tianhe, then no one would be able to save him. Yet Gu Tianhe was taken aback. What was going on here? Uncle Niu actually sent someone to see him. How dare you? You actually dare to act so insolent in front of the chairperson? Are you seeking death? Yan Jun seized the opportunity to immediately rebuke him. Although he was a prodigy of the Formations Association, he didn't mind currying the favor of Gu Tianhe. After all, his master was only an attendant, while Gu Tianhe was the chairperson. They couldn't be compared at all. Shut up! Unexpectedly, his flattery had completely failed. Gu Tianhe's gaze was extremely sharp as he glared angrily at him. Yan Jun was dumbfounded. What was going on here? Little friend, follow me. Gu Tianhe waved at Ling Han. This was a person sent by Uncle Niu, so he naturally could not take him lightly. Others might not know, but how could he not know? Niu Huaqing was the person who had stirred up the winds and clouds in the past. Unfortunately, fate played around with people, causing that formation's genius to become so dispirited. Thus, since Uncle Niu had sent someone to look for him, it must be something extremely important. He turned around and left. Now, naturally, no one dared to stop Ling Han anymore. The chairperson had spoken, so who would still be so blind? Ling Han glanced at Yan Jun, shook his head, and said, Chairperson Gu, I can't go in. Gu Tian had turned around and asked why. Someone said that if I want to enter, I have to crawl between his legs, Ling Han said. N. Gu Tianhe immediately looked towards Yan Jun, Yang Ziqing, and the others. Obviously, this must have been said by one of the 6 of them. Yan Jun almost stomped his foot in fury. Why was this brat so vengeful? He hurriedly said, Chairperson, don't listen to his nonsense. I did not forbid him from entering. I only said that if he wanted to make a report on my behalf, he would have to go through my... His voice became softer and softer because he had come back to his senses. Ling Han had deliberately said wrongly so that he could take the initiative to confess. How dare you? Gu Tianhe flew into a thunderous rage. Were you the one who created the Formations Association, that you could allow or not allow anyone to enter? Yan Jun could only bow his head now and allow Gu Tianhe to rain down curses on him. Ling Han. He gritted his teeth, clenching his fists tightly. Chapter 3165. 3165 Prodigy. Chapter 3165. 3165 Prodigy. 3165 Prodigy. In a place like the main entrance, Gu Tianhe ultimately could not ignore the reputation of the Formations Association. Thus, after he reprimanded them for a while, he stopped. Then he very kindly called Ling Han to follow him in. Ling Han quit while he was ahead. After all, he didn't have much of a relationship with the Formations Association. Moreover, if he were to beat someone up himself, that would be more satisfying. This would be considered as interest. He would collect a little interest first, while the total debt would be accounted for later. Ling Han followed Gu Tianhe into the main hall and into a study. This entire hall was made up of rocks, and since it was the Formations Association, there were naturally traces of formations left everywhere. The moment Ling Han entered, he felt as if a blade was piercing his back. If he committed a crime here, the formations would suppress him first without anyone interfering. Uncle Nio sent you here, so what message do you have for me? Gu Tianhe asked. Uncle Nio. No wonder Gu Tianhe was so amicable. So that was the case. However, that old geezer with such a laid-back personality actually had such an identity. Also, that old geezer's surname was actually Nio. Ling Han shook his head and said, Senior Nio only said that he wanted me to come find you, but didn't say what it was for. Gu Tianhe was taken aback. What did Uncle Nio mean? He suddenly recalled that he had previously gone to visit Nio Huaqing because of the competition that would be held in the imperial capital after the new year. He wanted to ask Nio Huaqing's opinion on who Nio Huaqing would send as representative. However, at that time, Nio Huaqing looked impatient and didn't even bother to pay him any attention. He didn't expect that only a few days had passed, and Nio Huaqing would actually send someone over. Could it be that this was the candidate recommended by Uncle Nio? A brat that wasn't even from the Formations Association. Gu Tianhe thought for a moment, then said, Little friend, are you a formation master? I know a little, Ling Han said. When did you start cultivating spiritual power? Gu Tianhe asked. About a few months ago. Gu Tianhe choked, feeling an indescribable awkwardness. Was this Uncle Nio deliberately messing with him, recommending such a rookie to make things difficult for him? If he ignored Ling Han, it was inevitable that he would have the bad reputation of disrespecting his elders. But if he agreed, sending a rookie to the imperial capital for a competition would be extremely embarrassing, wouldn't it? Sigh, this was too difficult. He thought for a moment, then said, All right, let's test out your spiritual power. Huh. Why are you testing my spiritual power? Ling Han found this strange. He had only come to deliver a message. So why was he being tested on his spiritual power now? What the hell was going on? Gu Tianhe took out a pen and placed it on the table, saying, Try to lift it. Ling Han had never tried using his spiritual power like this before, so he couldn't help but feel curious. His spiritual power surged out, turning into invisible tentacles that touched the pen. However, this pen was about 7 feet away from him, and after his spiritual power crossed this distance, it had declined to an extremely weak state. Gururu, this pen suddenly moved. Just as it was about to fall, Ling Han became anxious, and his spiritual power took the form of a hand. With a grab, this pen instantly stopped in midair. Gu Tianhe looked stunned. Though he had made such a request, in truth, he had not expected that Ling Han would really be able to do it. To accomplish this, one's spiritual power would have to reach the elementary level, at least. However, he had never imagined that Ling Han would actually succeed. Fuck, this guy had really only cultivated his spiritual power for a few months? It ought to be known that to reach the elementary level of spiritual power, even a prodigy like Yan Jun had spent 5 years. If this was true, then this brat was definitely freakish. He finally understood why Uncle Nio had sent Ling Han over. Talent, no prodigy. He couldn't help but feel slightly tempted. Should he really send Ling Han as the representative of Huju City? However, 2 days ago he had already discussed with a few attendants, and they would send Yan Jun as their representative. Now, if he suddenly said that he wanted to replace him, it seemed a little inexcusable. Furthermore, Yan Jun was also a prodigy of formations and had boundless future prospects. If he was withdrawn at the last minute, wouldn't that be disappointing him? What city would not welcome such a talent with open doors? But Ling Han, this was someone that Uncle Neo had recommended. If he didn't allow Ling Han to do it, wouldn't that be disrespecting Uncle Neo? If his master found out, it was probably possible that he would skin him alive. Furthermore, Ling Han was really too prodigious. He was really stuck in a dilemma. Say, couldn't your Uncle Neo have sent this person over earlier? Then he wouldn't have to be so hesitant. Sai, young friend, are you interested in joining our Formations Association? He looked at Ling Han smilingly. This kind of talent naturally had to be seized into the Formations Association. Ling Han smiled and said, I need to consider. All right. Gu Tianhe nodded. He thought that since this was a person that Uncle Neo had recommended, he probably wouldn't leave the city. He thought for a moment, then took out a silver badge and handed it to Ling Han. Take it. With this, you only need to show it in future, and no one would stop you. All right. Ling Han nodded. This was not a bad idea. He was very interested in formations. They could assist in battle, and could also be used to concoct alchemical pills. And as for formation techniques, he couldn't keep hoping that Niu Huaqing would give them to him, right? The two of them were completely unrelated. Ling Han bade farewell and left. He felt that this chairperson Gu was quite amiable, not putting on any airs at all. If this was known to others, they would definitely say that Ling Han must be blind. Gu Tianhe didn't put on any airs. What kind of joke was this? Wasn't he putting on too much airs? There were countless noble clans in the city that wanted to ask him to create formations, but in his case, he ignored them completely. Even if they piled up mountains of gold and silver, he couldn't be bothered to give them a second look. In fact, he wasn't even willing to meet them. No heirs? When they arrived at the entrance, Ling Han didn't see Yan Jun or Yang Ziqing. They probably didn't have the face to stay here any longer. However, it was very obvious that this enmity had been formed. So be it. Would they dare to go to the Xianqing banner and provoke him in public? Ling Han smiled faintly and returned home. Young Master Jun, we've already found out where that brat is staying. Yang Ziqing whispered into Yan Jun's ear in a restaurant. Yan Junjing stood by the window, arms crossed behind his back. This was a tall building with 69 floors. Looking down from here, everything seemed very insignificant. And at such a height, even if an elite of 12 meridians jumped down, it was guaranteed that he would be smashed into mush. All right. He nodded and did not say anything else. There were some things that he could not possibly let Yang Ziqing know. Young Master Jun, I don't know what relationship the brat has with Chairperson Gu. Let's not make a move on him rashly, all right? Yang Ziqing said. He was a little scared, fearing that Ling Han had an incredible background, and he would be in serious trouble. Yan Jun smirked coldly. This kind of person had no backbone and was afraid just like that. Don't worry. Firstly, you didn't do anything, and secondly, who is Chairperson Gu? How could a country bumpkin like him be worthy of having a connection to him? He waved his hand. You can go back now. Yang Ziqing pondered for a moment before gritting his teeth and saying, Young Master Jun, I'm willing to advance and retreat with you. Chapter 3166 3166 Hiring an Assassin. Chapter 3166 3166 Hiring an Assassin. 3166 Hiring an Assassin. Yan Jun glanced at him and said calmly, Then you go and send news and have Hell send assassins. Yang Ziqing was instantly shocked. Hell was an organization of assassins, and it was claimed that there was no one that they could not kill. To say nothing of ordinary people, even the higher-ups of the army and important ministers of the imperial court, as long as the price was right, they would also be willing to make a move. However, they had only had some verbal conflicts with Ling Han. Moreover, to be honest, it was indeed them who had started the conflict. Why had they escalated it to hiring an assassin organization? Could it be that there was some kind of grudge that he didn't know about? He had better not be the one to stand out in a moment of carelessness. However, he looked at Yenjun. He was a formation master with the brightest future prospects in Huju City, while Gu Tianhe would eventually die of old age. If he could develop a good relationship with the future chairperson of the Formations Association, his status in the clan would also increase greatly. In fact, he could even consider aiming for the position of clan leader. Ordinarily, it was impossible for him to take this position. "All right, I'll go immediately," he said through gritted teeth. He decided to go all the way on this path. Unlike the ancient Tao sect, which ruled alone, the Dark North Nation was a real country. Furthermore, it was a large country, occupying a very large area. Not only was ancient martial arts flourishing, the technology that existed before the upheaval of heaven and earth was actually beginning to revitalize again. Thus, not only were there optical computer here, but they were also connected to each other. Assassin organizations like Hell had an online platform that would allow people to place their orders. Of course, assassin organizations were the targets of attacks by the government. Thus, this kind of platform would often be disbanded, but it would always reappear with a new face. Yang Ziqing wrote down Ling Han's information on this platform, and very soon, Hell gave him a reply. 200,000 Dark North coins. For Yang Ziqing, this was a huge sum of money. The monthly allowance he received from his clan was only 10,000 Dark North coins. Usually, he would indulge himself in debauchery, and coupled with some expenses for cultivating, there was actually not much left. For some months, he didn't even have enough. Now he had to take out 200,000 all of a sudden. This was really difficult for him. "Don't you have enough money?" Yenjun asked. "I have enough." Yang Ziqing gritted his teeth. He used the reserve funds that his parents had given him to complete the payment. It wasn't long before he received a reply from Hell. There would be a result within 3 days. "Young Master Jun, it's done," Yang Zi said, though the expenditure was huge, and he had also taken a very great risk. He had finally made a connection with Yenjun. After this incident, he should have gained Yenjun's absolute trust. Yenjun nodded, a sliver of coldness in his eyes. From the beginning to the end, he had only moved his lips. If Yang Ziqing was found out, he would also shift the blame to him completely. For this crime, he would just let Yang Ziqing bear it alone. After Ling Han returned home, he set up the psychedelic formation in the courtyard. Because his current residence was very small, this formation was enough to enshroud the entire courtyard. Ling Han taught Huan Shui how to enter and exit the formations, to prevent this little attendant from being trapped inside as well. If no one stepped in, this formation wouldn't be activated, and the formation foundations buried underground wouldn't be seen through either. It was extremely covert, and once someone stepped in, unless they were also proficient in this formation, they would be trapped, the kind where they couldn't even see their own fingers. Of course, this could only imprison Meridian Opening Tier, because blood transformation tiers only needed to attack with their full power, and given their power was too great, they would forcefully destroy the connection between the formation foundations. Then the formation foundations would fall apart, and the formation would naturally cease to exist. This was an insurance that Ling Han had given himself. After all, he was different from before. He also needed to rest at night, and when he was resting, he couldn't possibly maintain a state of high vigilance. Though he had just arrived, he had already activated the halo of trouble. Just look at how the Yenjun had targeted him for no reason, and bore a deep killing intent towards him. He naturally had to be careful. It was time to study alchemy. The new formations required middle-level spiritual power. This wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight, so Ling Han placed his attention on alchemy. To be honest, his original intention for learning formations was actually to concoct alchemical pills. I'll check the optical computer first. There's a complete internet platform here, so I can find more information. He used the optical computer to search, and discovered that whether it was alchemy or formation techniques, there was very little information about the basics of their cultivation. On the internet, there were a great many platforms that sold items. Even if it was just normal food, clothing, and other needs, one could place orders on these platforms. As long as one had paid, the items would be delivered very quickly. It didn't matter even if he was in another city. The large platforms had their own setups in every city. Alchemy, alchemy, alchemy. Ling Han found a dedicated platform. This was set up by the Alchemy Association, which only sold alchemical pills. There's really have a lot of items. Mystical Power Pill can rapidly increase one's cultivation level. The Meridian Exploration Pill can increase the chances of sensing meridians by about 10%. No wonder there are so many people above 9 meridians here. With such alchemical pills, it would be enough for half of them to cross over to the next level. However, it's really expensive. Ling Han took a look. The selling price of each mystical power pill was as high as 2,000 dark North coins. Even for the likes of captains of Xianqing Banner, they could only afford to buy a few every month. Most importantly, the mystical power pill could be taken every day. No wonder. There are a great many 12 meridians in their 20s among the noble families in the city. But in the case of Xianqing Banner, they would need to be around 30 years old. Furthermore, they would have to be in the category of captain. They've already lost at the starting line. Ling Han searched his pockets. He had just been promoted to the position of Tao Child in the ancient Tao sect, so he didn't have much accumulation. Thus, the dark North coins he had now were only around 100,000. It looked like a lot, but he really couldn't buy many mystical power pills. Therefore, I have to grasp the refinement technique. In future, when Wan Xing and the others come out, they will also need it. However, pill recipes weren't sold on this platform. Ling Han could only trade. Very soon, he found a platform that was similar to the black market. Anything was really sold here, but to avoid potential issues, the seller would disguise the name of the merchandise. For example, the pill recipe for the mystical power pill was named Secret Recipe for increasing your power here. Those who knew it would naturally be able to understand it with a single glance. Ling Han bargained with the seller, and the deal was finally settled with 5,000 dark North coins. This actually wasn't expensive because after Ling Han learned it, he could also sell pill recipes on the platform. However, all the sellers seemed to have agreed that 5,000 would be the lowest price, and no one was willing to lower the price. It was easiest to complete this kind of business transaction. After paying, the platform sent over the recipe for the pill. Ling Han carefully examined it. There aren't many ingredients needed, and after checking the price, the cost is about 500 dark North coins. If the furnace doesn't explode, then the number of completed pills would be between 3 to 5. Sigh, alchemy is indeed profitable. The Alchemy Association actually sells them for 2,000 per pill. TSK, TSK, TSK. But that's good too. I can then concoct alchemical pills to earn money. Chapter 3167. 3167 Pill Refinement Gamble. Chapter 3167. 3167 Pill Refinement Gamble. 3167 Pill Refinement Gamble. Ling Han was glad. He was finally going to get back to his old business. In truth, he very much enjoyed concocting alchemical pills. However, this world placed too much importance on power. Thus, he also had to focus more of his energy on cultivating martial arts. Otherwise, if he did not have enough abilities, he wouldn't even be sure if he could continue to survive. Where would he find the leisure to concoct alchemical pills? I also need a set of formations called the 7 Stars Formation. Forget it, I'll go buy it in the shop. Ling Han immediately took action. He first went to the medicinal ingredients store to gather all the ingredients for the alchemical pill. He had at least 100,000 coins, so he was very wealthy. In a single go, he bought 100 portions of ingredients, and he even required the store to send a carriage to deliver them back for him. The task of following the carriage was delegated to Huan Shui. Ling Han then went to there's a formation shop. Senior Niu, Ling Han called out. Since he knew Niu Huaqing's identity, he had to show some respect. That brat actually revealed this old man's identity. Niu Huaqing asked in displeasure. This brat was naturally referring to Gu Tianhe. It was pitiful. Gu Tianhe was the chairperson, after all, and his authority was not inferior to that of the city lord. Ling Han shook his head internally. You sent me over like this and deliberately didn't give them prior notice. Gu Tianhe would definitely have accidentally leaked the secret. Otherwise, was he supposed to ask why that old geezer sent him over then? Wasn't he afraid of being sliced? He merely chuckled and asked, Senior, is there a 7 stars formation for sale here? Why do you want the 7 stars formation? Niu Huaqing was very curious. This is something that alchemists use to concoct alchemical pills. If you wanted the 7 stars formation's formation scroll, I wouldn't think it strange. But now you actually want the completed 7 stars formation? I plan to concoct alchemical pills, Ling Han said. Pooh! Niu Qinghua instantly spluttered, looked at Ling Han, and then laughed loudly. He naturally found this funny. Even though alchemists also needed to learn formations, most alchemists didn't need to refine foundations themselves. They only needed to stimulate formations, and this only required spiritual power. You think that just because you know formations, you can concoct alchemical pills. What a joke. Ling Han also smiled, Senior. You don't believe that I can concoct alchemical pills. I don't believe it. I definitely don't believe it. Niu Huaqing shook his head. 1 out of 10,000 formations masters could have the extraordinary talent to be able to practice alchemy on top of formations. But how many formations masters were there in the dark North Nation to begin with? Hence, this was completely impossible. Do you want to make a bet? Ling Han asked with a crooked smile. If the large black dog was present, they would immediately be able to determine that Ling Han was trying to screw someone over. Niu Huaqing rolled his eyes and said, Sure. If I can concoct alchemical pills, then Senior's formation techniques will be open to me. I can learn whatever I want, Ling Han said. To Niu Huaqing, this wasn't a real loss, but to Ling Han, it was a great profit. Sure. Niu Huaqing smiled calmly. If you lose, then I want you to focus all your attention on formations. After you go to the imperial capital, you will become the #1 formation master in 10 years' time. This seemed to be completely for Ling Han's own good. Ling Han nodded and said, All right, deal. It was impossible for him to focus all his energy on formations. However, he would not lose it all. Niu Huaqing searched for a while, then handed Ling Han a 7 stars formation. These were foundation formations, but they were slightly higher class than the 3 elements formation. They needed to be stimulated with spiritual power, and in the process of pill concoction, they needed to involve a lot of control over the strength of the energy. Thus, it was impossible for 2 people to divide the work among themselves. One would be concocting alchemical pills, while the other would be controlling formations unless the 2 of them were mentally connected. It wasn't that they didn't exist. There were 2 sisters in the imperial capital. One was a formation master, and the other was Alchemist formation master. They were mentally connected and could work together to concoct alchemical pills. A few years ago, their names took the world by storm. Ling Han familiarized himself with the formations first. This didn't need much time, and he quickly grasped them. What was important was to control the energy fluctuations when concocting alchemical pills. There couldn't be any errors at each node. Otherwise, it would affect the number and quality of completed pills. In fact, the cauldron might even explode and all efforts would be in vain. After preparing for half a day, Ling Han began to concoct alchemical pills. He stimulated the formations, then proficiently tossed in various ingredients. The formations stimulated the power of heaven and earth, turning into some kind of mystical power. The medicinal ingredients that were thrown in seemed to be supported by an invisible hand. They did not fall to the ground, but rather floated in midair. Fuck, this brat couldn't really be a dual prodigy of formation and alchemy, right? Looking at Ling Han's proficient movements, Niu Huaqing was a little uncertain. This kind of proficiency and confidence was definitely not something that could be formed all of a sudden. But this brat was clearly not even 20 years old yet, so where would he get so much time to practice alchemy? Moreover, this guy was quite accomplished in formations. Hold on, it seemed like this guy had only been practicing formations for a few months, right? Thinking of this, the corner of Niu Huaqing's mouth involuntarily twitched. Could it be that he really encountered a monstrous talent? For Ling Han, alchemical pills like the mystical power pill were really too simple. Whether it was the technique or the change of control over the energy, they could not be considered complicated at all. It would only take 2 hours to complete the concoction. This was really no big deal. He was the alchemy emperor after all. Even if this was the first time he was refining, Ling Han was still very relaxed. His posture and composure would make even experienced alchemists grab his head in shock and exclaim in disbelief. That was natural. He had concocted alchemical pills in the Genesis world for who knew how many years, so who could compare? 2 hours later, Ling Han was done, for green alchemical pills were spinning around in the formations, emitting a slightly sweet and bitter smell. He reached over and grabbed the alchemical pills. He then stopped the formation. The longer and more times the formations channeled, the more worn out the formation foundations would naturally be. You really succeeded? Niu Huaqing asked in surprise, even though he had already guessed that Ling Han would succeed when he saw his attitude just then. Ling Han smiled and handed over the alchemical pills. He said, "Please take a look, Senior." "No need, this old man is really impressed. There is actually such a prodigy in this world who is proficient in formations and alchemy at the same time." Niu Huaqing sighed and threw a key at Ling Han. "In future, you can come here as you like." "Thank you, Senior." Ling Han put away the key. Since he had already begun concocting, he would concoct a few more batches. Ling Han activated the formations and continued to refine pills. 2, 3 for Bacheza, he refined 7 batches in a single breath before finally stopping, and he was also very tired. Alchemy required controlling the formations, and controlling the formations required using spiritual power. Right now, most of his spiritual power had already been expended, and he felt a headache coming on. This was the result of overuse. No, he had to go back to sleep. Ling Han bade Niu Huaqing farewell and returned home. Fuck, could it be that this brat is really a monster? Niu Huaqing murmured. Even though he was a formation master, he did not lack knowledge about alchemy. I remember, ordinary alchemists would only be able to concoct 2 or 3 batches in a row. This brat actually concocted 7 batches in a single go. In terms of spiritual power, he's only at the elementary level. Thus, his spiritual power can't possibly be too powerful. There's only one possibility. His use of spiritual power has reached an incomparably exquisite level, and he didn't waste a single bit. Hiss, this old man has really picked up a treasure. Chapter 3168. 3168 Assassin Killed. Chapter 3168. 3168 Assassin Killed. 3168 Assassin Killed. Ling Han returned to his residence. He first ingested a mystical power pill, and after refining it, he fell asleep. He was too tired. Huan Shui had also ingested a mystical power pill, and was currently channeling her cultivation to refine it. She had long since been taught the Xianhuang technique, assisted by the cultivation technique and the spirit gathering formation. Her improvement was maintained at an astonishing speed, and she was now at 6 meridians. This was mainly because the Xianhuang technique didn't temper mystical power very well, unlike Ling Han. The power extracted from the spirit-gathering formation, and after refining, couldn't even reach 1/3 of that from a normal cultivation technique. It was too useless. However, underlying Huan Xue's rapid advancement was her lack of battle prowess, only comparable to an ordinary 6 meridians. This was actually already good enough. The little handmaiden was presently cultivating, because Ling Han had returned extremely late. By the time she had completely absorbed the medicinal effects of the mystical power pill, it was already past 3 o'clock in the morning. She yawned and was just about to go to rest when she suddenly discovered that the formation in the courtyard had been activated. She was a bit of a natural airhead. At first, she was stunned and tilted her head in thought. Then, her expression changed drastically. Someone had barged in. Otherwise, why would the formations activate? It was a thief. Huan Xue's first reaction was to wake Ling Han up, but when she thought of the young master's exhausted expression when he returned, she immediately dismissed this thought. Instead, she drew her sword and said to herself, "I can't disturb young master's rest. I'll be the one to guard young master." She emphasized it a few times to boost her own confidence. Then, wielding her sword, she walked into the courtyard. Her movements weren't small, and they caused some commotion. However, she didn't need to worry about being heard by the people in the formation. After entering this formation, one's brain would be deceived, and they would hear and see indescribable things. Then, as if they were trapped in a maze, they would not be able to walk out. From the outside, the area covered by this formation was actually very small. They would be able to exit after taking a few consecutive steps. With Ling Han's help, and added with the fact that Huan Xue's body had also cultivated spiritual power, she was naturally able to control this formation. That psychedelic effect was no longer effective on her. She could clearly see that there were 2 black-robed men in the formation. Their heads were covered, and they held shining long swords in their hands. It wasn't a thief. Huan Xue wasn't stupid. She was just a little slow to react. She immediately came to her senses. Thieves didn't need to use weapons. Only bandits would. Moreover, this was Huju City, so where would the bandits come from? Thus, there was only one possibility left. They had deliberately come to kill Ling Han. They wanted to kill the young master. Huan Xue instantly felt a strong fighting spirit rise up in her. At first, she was a little afraid, but now she didn't feel anything at all. She only felt incredibly furious. Someone actually wanted to harm her young master. Die! She approached and delivered a sword strike. Under the effects of the psychedelic formation, the senses of the 2 masked people were deceived, and they did not sense anyone approaching at all. Moreover, that she came equipped with a sword. Needless to say, these 2 people were assassins sent by the Hell Organization, and as expected of someone with such a profession, they had an instinctive feeling about killing intent. When Huan Xue's sword was about to reach one of them, the masked person immediately reacted and hurriedly dodged. However, it was still a little too late. The tip of the sword swept past, leaving behind a fairly deep wound on his waist. Woo! That person released an exclamation of surprise. However, beside him, his companion acted as if he had not seen or heard anything, which appeared extremely bizarre. Huan Xue's hands trembled slightly, and her face was also a little pale. This was not her first time fighting, but it was the first time she had the thought of killing someone. There was blood on the sword, and it exuded a fishy smell, making her feel like throwing up. However, when she thought of Ling Han, she immediately strengthened her resolve. If anyone wanted to harm her young master, they would have to step over her corpse first, she thought. Her resolve strengthened, and she struck again with her sword. This time it was a different person. Furthermore, her hand was even steadier. She stabbed out with her sword. It moved swiftly, accurately, and without hesitation, directly aiming for that person's back. That person was completely unprepared, and when the long sword approached him, he suddenly came to his senses. However, it was already too late for him to dodge. He only had time to roar loudly and swung his sword behind him. However, being affected by the formations, even though he clearly wanted to draw his sword backwards, in the end, it pierced towards his left. As luck would have it, his companion was precisely at this position. Previously, his companion had been struck by the sneak attack, and thus was incredibly alert at the moment. As such, when this strike came, his reaction speed was extremely fast, and he drew his sword in a timely manner, wanting to block this attack. However, formations affected his divine sense. While he felt like he had parried this strike, the truth was otherwise. Pooh! Pooh! The other assassin's eyes widened, and he lowered his head to look at his chest. He saw the tip of his own blade, while another sword had been stabbed into his chest. He recognized this sword as that of his companion. Fuck! This thought flashed through his mind. With a tilt of his head, he died. A dead person would not be affected by formations. He fell towards his companion and landed right by the latter's feet. The remaining assassin was also shocked, but when he finally saw the corpse of his companion, he couldn't help but pale in shock. He had encountered an elite. First, he had almost been struck, and then his companion had been silently stabbed to death. Clearly, the strength of his opponent far surpassed what was described in the information. They had been tricked. Retreat! He grabbed the corpse of his companion, then tossed out a rare treasure. This was a silver shuttle, and after he channeled it, it emitted a silvery light that surrounded him. Then it sank into the ground, and he was gone. Having no more living people in it, the formations immediately stopped channeling. Had he fled? Huan Shui was slightly displeased as she held her sword. One of them had actually fled. However, in the next instant, she immediately recalled that she had killed someone. Her hand involuntarily shook. Ding! The long sword fell to the ground, and she leaned over to the side and vomited madly. After a long while, she finally calmed down. I have no regrets. Even if it happens again, not only will I kill someone, I won't let the other person escape either. Everything I have is given to me by young master. I want to protect young master. The little female attendant thought resolutely. A night passed, and Ling Han pushed open the doors and walked out. He soon noticed that Huan Shui was hugging a sword and napping in the courtyard. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Huan Shui immediately jumped up, brandishing the sword in her hand as if she was facing a great enemy. Huan Shui, what is it? Ling Han asked with a smile. Huan Shui let out a sigh of relief when she heard his voice. She hurriedly related what had happened that night. Oh, assassins have come. Ling Han's eyes focused on the courtyard. There was still a pool of blood that had not completely dried up within the formation. He thought for a moment and felt that there was no need to guess who the mastermind was. It was likely either Yan Jun or Yang Ziqing, or it could just as likely be that the two of them were in cahoots to begin with. It wasn't difficult to guess. Ling Han was only curious. What kind of enmity did he have with Yan Jun? Why was the latter so determined to target him? No matter what, this enmity has been formed. He asked about the two assassins in detail, but the little handmaiden did not have much knowledge to begin with. She did not know anything at all, and only knew that they were two masked assassins. When that person left, he took out a silver shuttle. This is a rare treasure that can break through formations. Ling Han murmured, Looks like I have to set up a killing formation. Chapter 3169 3169 Improved Mystical Power Pill. Chapter 3169 3169 Improved Mystical Power Pill. 3169 Improved Mystical Power Pill. Young Master Jun, the assassination mission has failed, Yang Ziqing said with an expression of disbelief. He had just received the news through the optical computer and had immediately come to inform Yan Jun. Yan Jun was also taken aback. He put down his wine cup and asked, How is that possible? The assassination success rate of the Hell organization was extremely high, and there were very few times that they failed. He had not thought that they would actually be defeated by a country bumpkin. The authorities of the organization also said that the information we gave was wrong. The other party was not a single person, but rather a woman who was proficient in formations was protecting Ling Han. They sent out 2 silver-plated assassins, and in the end, one died and one was injured. They even wasted a rare treasure before fleeing back, Yang Ziqing said. He paused and said with a long face, the Hell organization also wants us to pay compensation. Us. Yan Jun chuckled. What does it have to do with me? What? Yang Ziqing almost jumped up. How could you do this? You were clearly the one who wanted to commit murder. Yet now there's a slip-up, and you're pushing all the blame onto me. You can't play around like this. But when he recalled Yan Jun's identity, he could only suppress his anger and said, Young Master Jun, don't joke around. In order to help you complete this mission, I have already gone bankrupt. Yan Jun chuckled coldly but ignored him. Instead, he mumbled, In the Hell organization, only those who have reached the top grade can be bestowed a title. There are a total of 3 types of titles: diamond, gold, and silver medal. However, this did not mean that silver plate assassins fell behind the diamond and gold assassins. A silver plate represents that they had the highest success rate for assassinating Meridian opening tier practitioners. Meanwhile, the gold assassin is the best at killing blood transformation tier practitioners. Doesn't this mean that there's no one in the Meridian opening tier that can kill that guy? Yan Jun pondered for a moment. In other words, he should kill Ling Han as if he were a blood transformation tier cultivator. But in this way, the price of assassination would increase exponentially. Although he was a formations prodigy, he was only in his early 20s after all, so what savings could he have? Furthermore, did they think that practicing formations was cheap? That was also a huge expense. His savings were completely insufficient for the Hell organization to send out assassins at the level of blood transformation tier. Did this mean he would have to let it go just like that? How could that be allowed? The moment he thought of the scene of Lian Xuerong and Ling Han together, flames of fury burned in his heart. No, he couldn't endure it. Moreover, once Ling Han's leave was cancelled, he would move into Xianqing Banner's base camp. Would he still have the chance to kill Ling Han like this? Moreover, once Ling Han entered the camp, wouldn't the adulterous couple be able to live together then? Yan Jun spoke up and said, Ling Han must die. But Yang Ziqing wanted to clarify the situation objectively. He was out of money. I don't care what method you use. Go lend, steal, or snatch. In short, you must make the Hell organization move again. Yan Jun stared at Yang Ziqing. I will also go and raise money, and after this matter, I will help you ascend to the position of clan leader of the Yang clan. Do as you see fit. Yang Ziqing gritted his teeth, clapped his hands abruptly, and said, Young Master Jun, I understand. For the sake of the position of clan leader, he was going all out. Now, Ling Han had many things to do. Aside from cultivating the brother monkey cultivation technique for half an hour every morning, he still had to practice his spiritual power, study formation patterns, and concoct alchemical pills, so he was extremely busy. However, after ingesting one mystical power pill after another, his cultivation progress was also extremely rapid. Ordinarily speaking, one could only take one mystical power pill a day, and there was not much benefit to taking more. That was because there were substantial traces of poison in the pill, and there would be medicinal sediment which would block the meridians, thereby affecting normal cultivation. In fact, even one's abilities would be affected. Mystical power was stored in his meridians. If his meridians were blocked, how could he channel the power out? Ling Han had only ingested one mystical power pill, and with his supreme comprehension of alchemy, he soon made modifications to the pill recipe, thereby reducing the existence of medicinal dregs. To say that there would be no medicinal dregs left behind at all was an impossible feat, unless the entire pill recipe was changed. That would be a project that demanded an entirely different level of effort. In a mere 3 days, Ling Han had already completed the modification of the pill recipe. He had concocted a new batch of mystical power pills, with the residue of the alchemical pill decreased to half of what it had been. This meant that he could take 2 mystical power pills in a day, and they were even purer. I can sell off some of them. Money grows more money, and only then would it form a positive cycle, Ling Han mumbled to himself. Should I sell the original type or the improved version? Let's do the improved version. The cost of this modified version of the mystical power pill was actually slightly lower, because Ling Han had removed 1 medicinal ingredient and decreased the portions of 3 medicinal ingredients. However, the effects had not decreased, but had instead increased. This was the strength of the alchemy emperor. He took 10 modified versions of mystical power pills and set out, heading to the largest alchemical pill shop in the city. Customer, what medicine do you want to buy? Immediately, a shop assistant approached. Ling Han shook his head and said, I'm not buying medicine. I want to sell medicine. Selling medicines? The shop assistant was curious. Of course, the shop had to purchase stock, but no one had ever come to the shop to take the initiative to promote themselves. Why? It was simple. What alchemist wasn't extremely proud, who would worry about not being able to sell alchemical pills and felt the need to personally come? And selling alchemical pills. Ling Han took out a bottle. This is the mystical power pill. It has been modified, and the medicinal dregs have decreased by half. Not only has its effects not decreased, it has instead increased by about 10%. What? The shop assistant got a scare. He naturally knew what the mystical power pill was. In this world, the number of low-level cultivators would definitely be the highest. Thus, among the alchemical pills he sold, the mystical power pill was the most sought after. A great many alchemists had thought of improving this pill recipe to decrease the medicinal dregs. But why had there never been an improved version of the alchemical pill this whole time? That was because no one could do it. Now a young man had come over and said that there was an improved version of the mystical power pill. How could they believe this? A scammer. The shop assistant didn't dare to confirm. He pondered for a moment, then said, Please wait for a moment. I'll ask for instructions from our boss. Ling Han smiled and handed the bottle over. You can take this along. There was only 1 pill here. Since he was going to sell medicine, he naturally would not mind giving one to others for a taste. All right. The shop assistant took the bottle, turned and left. Tongue, tongue, tongue. He went up to the 2nd floor. Why are you so blind? Can't you see this young master? A young man walked in, and when he saw Ling Han standing lazily, he couldn't help but feel angry. Ling Han was baffled. Who had he offended by standing here? He knew that he was good at attracting animosity, but he would never have thought that he would offend anyone just by standing there and waiting, right? Forget it, ignore it. You be at starred. Do you not want to continue living here? This young man was actually unwilling to give up and directly walked over, looking very aggressive. Ling Han finally understood. This guy thought of him as a shop assistant here, so when he didn't approach and serve him, this made him angry. But was that really necessary? Scram, he stated calmly. If others were not polite, there was naturally no need for him to be nice either. Chapter 3170. 3170 First Arrogance, then Deference. Chapter 3170. 3170 First Arrogance, then Deference. 3170 First Arrogance, then Deference. You brat, if I don't kill you today, then my name isn't Pan Hu, this young man said as he pointed at Ling Han's nose. Young master, Hu, calm down, calm down. Another shop assistant jogged over. He's not one of our shop assistants, but a customer, a customer. Pan, who snorted and said, "Customer? So what if he's a customer? Just because he is a customer, he can tell me to scram?" The newly arrived shop assistant was so anxious that he was about to sweat. Of course, harmony was the most important thing in business. If news of their Mercy Medicine Hall bullying customers spread, how would they be able to do business in the future? However, this Pan, who was their lady boss's nephew, so how could he dare to offend him? "What are you waiting for? Quickly chase him out." Pan, who said coldly. He looked at Ling Han and said, "With me, the young master, here, don't even think about buying anything." This customer." The newly arrived shop assistant looked at Ling Han with a troubled expression. If he didn't chase him away, then he would definitely be fired later. "All right." Ling Han nodded, turned around and walked out of the door, walking slowly. "However, don't regret it. At least you know what's good for you. Otherwise, there will definitely be suffering for you." Pan, who said fiercely at Ling Han's back. He actually dared to threaten him. Humph, he didn't know what was good for him. Tung, tung, tung. Someone came down from the second floor. Pan, who turned around and immediately put away his proud expression. He went up to him and greeted, "Uncle." Two people came down from upstairs. The person walking in front was a middle-aged man who was almost 50 years old. Ordinary people's lifespan was about 150 years old, so anyone below 70 years old could be called middle-aged. He was the boss of Mercy Medicine Hall, Mo Guahao. He was quite a respected figure in Huju City. The other person was the shop assistant who had gone up earlier. He followed behind Mo Guahao. The reason why Pan, who could be so domineering, was naturally because of Mo Guahao. Therefore, in front of Mo Guahao, he had turned from a wild tiger to a tame cat. He could only try his best to please him. Mo Guahao only nodded slightly. He had never liked this nephew, but he was his sister-in-law's son. For the sake of his wife, he had to tolerate him. He frowned. "Where's that customer?" "What customer?" Pan, whose heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Mo Guahao had specially come downstairs to see that brat just now? No, no, no. How is this possible? Not only was his uncle the boss of Mercy Medicine Hall, but he was also a middle-level alchemist. How could he lower himself to personally meet a small fry? He must be thinking too much. Mo Guahao looked at the other shop assistant and frowned. He immediately exuded a suffocating pressure. "I'm asking you a question." The other shop assistant shivered and hurriedly said, "Boss, is the customer you mentioned a young man who looks less than 20 years old, dressed in a green suit?" Mo Guahao turned around and looked at the shop assistant who had just gone upstairs to seek him out. "That's him." The shop assistant nodded. Pan, who was stunned. What was going on? Mo Guahao really wanted to see that kid. A strong sense of foreboding rose in his heart. "Where is he?" Mo Guahao asked again. He was too excited. Someone had actually improved the formula of the mystical power pill. Even now, he still felt his scalp tingle. He left," the other shop assistant said. "Why did he leave?" Mo Guahao looked stern. The other party was clearly here to sell alchemical pills, and had even given him a completed pill, showing his incomparable sincerity. If nothing major had happened, why would the other party suddenly leave? And why in such a hurry? "Uncle, that person was too arrogant. He was picky from the moment he entered. I argued with him, but he was still unconvinced. He wanted to inflict violence, but I chased him out," Pan, who hurriedly said. He knew that this matter could not be hidden, so it was better for him to say it first and distort the truth. "Humph." Mo Guahao's face became stern. Did he not know this nephew well? He was full of nonsense and could not be believed at all. He was here to sell medicine, and it was an improved version of the mystical power pill. It was not an exaggeration to say that as long as Ling Han released the news, all the pharmacies in Huju City would gladly cooperate with him. Picky? What nonsense. "You, go and invite that person back." Mo Guahao suppressed his anger and said, Usually he would let this guy do whatever he wanted, but not today. He had to teach him a good lesson this time. If you can't invite him back, you don't have to step into this place or the Emo clan residence ever again. Ah, Pan, whose face involuntarily drooped. Just now, how had he treated Ling Han? Now he actually had to go and invite him back. One could imagine what kind of expression Ling Han would show him. He was used to being arrogant. How could he stand it if he had to beg someone humbly? However, the problem was that if he did not invite Ling Han back, then Emo Guahao would clearly not acknowledge him as his nephew. Then, without the backing of the Emo clan, what was he worth? After thinking about it, he felt that there was only one way. If he were to stay stubborn now, he would be finished in the future. Uncle, don't worry. I'll definitely complete the mission, Pan, who said, and hurriedly chased after him. As he ran, he soon saw Ling Han. You. He caught up with him. Come back with me. My uncle wants to see you. He still maintained his high and mighty attitude, wanting to use this to intimidate Ling Han. Ling Han stopped in his tracks and said, Do you think I will go meet him just because you say so? It's your good fortune that my uncle is willing to see you. Pan, who said, Do you know who my uncle is? Emo Guahao is a great alchemist. There are enough people who beg him to refine pills to form a long line. What else are you not satisfied with? Scram! Ling Han waved his hand dismissively. Good dogs don't block the way, scram aside. Brat, don't be an ungrateful wretch. Pan, who shouted harshly. Ling Han smiled faintly. With his insight, he could naturally tell that Pan Ho-hu was already putting on a fierce front, but cowardly on the inside. However, it didn't matter even if Pan Ho-hu's attitude was really forceful. Then he would beat him up severely. With a modified version of the mystical power pill in hand, how could he be afraid of not having a pharmacy that would buy it from him? He strode forward, completely ignoring Pan Ho. Pan Ho-hu gritted his teeth and hurriedly set off in pursuit again. He asked, What exactly do you want to be willing to leave with me? It was still this kind of attitude. Ling Han chuckled and continued onwards. Pan, who broke out in a cold sweat. If he could not invite Ling Han back today, then he would be chased out of the clan by Emo Guahao, and once he lost the backing of the Emo clan, what difference would there be between him and the hooligans on the streets? When he thought that it was possible that he would become someone that he usually looked down on, how could he still have any reservations? He immediately rushed in front of Ling Han, and then knelt down resoundingly. Please come back with me. Ling Han looked at him calmly, to say nothing of the fact that he had once been an ultimate elite. Now that he had restarted his path of alchemy, he could still become an influential figure. Would he care about the worship of such a minor character? It would not be so easy. He continued walking. My lord, I was wrong. I was wrong. Pan Ho-hu repeatedly kowtowed behind him. Chapter 3171. 3171 deal. Chapter 3171. 3171 deal. 3171 deal. Only then did Ling Han stop in his tracks, but he did not turn around. Seeing that there was a chance, Pan Ho-hu hurriedly continued to kowtow, not daring to stop. At the beginning, this caused his face to burn, kneeling down in public. Just how humiliating was that? But he actually wasn't some mighty figure, so how many people even knew him? Now, everyone was watching the excitement, but it was possible that they would forget all about it after a few days. For someone like him, pride was naturally important, but compared with actual benefits, it was negligible. Please forgive me. I was wrong. I have really learnt my lesson now. He kowtowed so hard that even the skin of his forehead was broken. That particular spot was dripping with blood, which was still flowing down his cheek, and there was an indescribable misery about his whole appearance. What did you do wrong? Ling Han turned around and asked calmly. I shouldn't have been blind. I shouldn't have been arrogant and conceited. I shouldn't have looked down on others. Pan, who continued to reflect on himself. describing himself as the most shameless and immoral person in the world. Ling Han merely wanted to punish this person and still wanted to do business with the Mercy Medicine Hall. After all, this was the largest pharmacy in Huju City, and its sales were also the best. Thus, seeing Pan, who shed snot and tears like this, he felt that it was time to stop. "All right, get up," he said. Thank you, my lord." Only then did Pan Hu carefully get back to his feet. Someone like him was the type to bully the weak and fear the strong. Once his arrogance was suppressed, he would really be like a dog. He jogged over and said, "My lord, my uncle wants to see you." "Lead the way," Ling Han said. Business was more important. "Yes." Pan Hu replied and hurriedly walked ahead. It wasn't long before they arrived back at Mercy Medicine Hall. "I am Mo Guahao." The moment he entered, Mo Guahao came out to receive him. He smiled and stretched out his hand towards Ling Han, appearing extremely cordial. "I have really neglected you just now. I will definitely punish this brat severely." "Ling Han." Ling Han stretched out his hand and shook hands with him. In the Genesis world, people generally clasped their hands in greeting. It seemed like this place liked to use the gesture of a handshake to exchange pleasantries. He smiled and said, "Who hasn't done wrong before? It's good enough that he will change." Was he interceding on his behalf? Pan, who couldn't help but feel excited. In fact, he even felt like crying. Ling Han was actually interceding on his behalf after how he had treated him. Young friend Ling is really broad-minded. Mo Guahao laughed loudly. Please come upstairs. Please." The two of them went upstairs, and the other workers naturally didn't dare to follow them. Pan, who pondered for a moment, then shamelessly went up to the second floor. Mo Guahao merely cast a glance at Pan Hu and did not chase him away, which made Pan Hu feel slightly relieved. "Go, bring 2 cups of tea over," Mo Guahao said to Pan Hu after he had invited Ling Han to sit down. Yes. Pan Hu hurriedly left. "Young friend, how many more of these alchemical pills do you have?" Mo Guahao asked. He pointed at the bottle on the table that Ling Han had previously handed over to the staff. He had scraped off a bit to taste. With his strength as a middle-level alchemist, he was naturally able to immediately determine what improvements this new mystical power pill had. Thus, he immediately rushed down in extreme excitement. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "It's no problem to supply 10 pills every day." 10 pills. Mo Guahao was stunned. He was not surprised by this number, but rather the fact that 10 pills could be supplied every day at such a uniform amount. Could it be that this was concocted by our young friend, he asked. Otherwise, how could there be such guarantees? Ling Han smiled faintly, "That's right." Formation masters and alchemists were both symbols of status, and were also synonyms for safety. He had just arrived here, so he needed a certain amount of security. Mo Guahao couldn't help but inhale sharply. Such a young alchemist. If one wanted to become an elementary-level alchemist, they would have to concoct at least 10 types of elementary-level alchemical pills, and at least one of them would need spiritual power to stimulate the formations for its concoction. During the concoction process, they would also need to use their spiritual power to control the energy flow in the formations. Hence, at the beginning, the requirements for spiritual power were very high, and one had to reach elementary level. However, after that, alchemy didn't have too high a requirement for spiritual power. One only needed to be extremely detailed and meticulous. This was another direction of development. However, if one wanted to reach the spiritual power of elementary level, even a prodigy would need to be around 24 or 25 years old. Ordinary people would need to be over 30 years old. If one wanted to refine the mystical power pill, they would definitely need elementary level spiritual power pills. In other words, this young man in front of them was qualified to do so. This was too shocking. "Young friend, you are really surprising." He sighed with emotion. It should be known that he had cultivated elementary-level spiritual power when he was 24 years old. This was already considered a super genius, but compared with Ling Han, Ling Han merely smiled. He had always been very modest and had never been proud. Is young friend willing to sell the modified mystical power pill recipe? Mo Guohao's eyes were burning. Though the mystical power pill could only be used on meridian opening tier elites and was too low level for the overall level of cultivation, it was precisely because this was the lowest level that it possessed the widest market. If he could master this recipe and vigorously promote the new version of the mystical power pill, not only would he be able to obtain a huge amount of wealth, but he would also be able to leave his name in history. The strength of the entire army of the nation would increase greatly, because it would definitely be the lower ranks that had the most number of soldiers. Ling Han shook his head, not interested. Mo Guohao couldn't help but feel disappointed. However, this was within his expectations. If he could think of this, how could it be that Ling Han couldn't either? To be able to accomplish what all alchemists wanted to do, but were unable to do, how could he be an idiot? In truth, he was really wrong. Ling Han would not take this kind of elementary-level pill recipe seriously. However, at present, he still had to depend on the modified version of the mystical power pill to earn money, so he naturally had to be the only supplier to be able to push up the price. When he learnt more pill recipes, such as one that could increase the cultivation level of blood transformation tier elites, and improved on it, he naturally wouldn't need to depend on the mystical power pill to earn money. By then, he would be able to sell the pill recipe. 10 pills a day? Mo Guohao settled for the next best thing. With the addition of the modified mystical power pill, Mercy Medicine Hall's position as the boss of the industry was firm and unbreakable. Otherwise, pharmacies like Western Clouds Medicine Hall and Great Conquer Medicine Hall that were not much inferior to Mercy Medicine Hall could surpass them at any time. Ling Han nodded. I'll give you an address. Just send someone to pick it up every evening. All right. Mo Guohao nodded earnestly. Ling Han took out another bottle. This one was much bigger, and there were 9 mystical power pills inside. He placed them on the table. What's the price? He asked. This was naturally the most important question. Ordinary mystical power pills sell for 2,000 each. If this is a modified version, the effects would more than double, and the significance would definitely not be as simple as double. Thus, I have decided to price it at 5,000. Mo Guohao looked at Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. What about the dividends? You take 4,000, Mo Guohao said. This ratio was really generous. Chapter 3172. 3172 Meridian Exploration Pill. Chapter 3172. 3172 Meridian Exploration Pill. 3172 Meridian Exploration Pill. Mo Guohao was an alchemist, but at the same time he was also a businessman. In business, he naturally hoped to earn more money. However, he also knew that if Ling Han sent this modified version of mystical power pill to other pharmacies, it would cause the customer flow of other pharmacies to spike. The total number of customers was fixed. The sudden rise of customers for other stores would naturally decrease the flow of customers to the Mercy Medicine Hall. Thus, this was something that had to be considered. Moreover, though the sales ratio of mystical power pills for Mercy Medicine Hall and other alchemists was 3-2, an ordinary mystical power pill would only be sold for 2,000. In other words, with every single pill sold, the Mercy Medicine Hall would only obtain 500 dark North coins. Going by that calculation, even though the profit ratio was disadvantageous to the Mercy Medicine Hall, it was actually quite profitable. Furthermore, it could increase the customer flow and drive the profits of other alchemical pills as well. How profitable would that be? Thus, Mo Guohao wasn't stupid at all. Ling Han chuckled. To him, the pill completion rate was naturally 100%. On average, each cauldron would count as 4 pills. Then, the cost of 500 would earn him 16,000, which was naturally a huge profit. All right, he nodded. Seeing Ling Han agree, Mo Guahao couldn't help but become even more enthusiastic. This was because Ling Han had become an extremely important business partner of his. Seeing how Mo Guahao held Ling Han in such high regard, Pan, who couldn't help but feel lucky. If he hadn't managed to catch up with Ling Han and convince him to come back, who knew how much Mo Guahao would scold him now. "Boss Missouri, are there any pill recipes for sale here?" Ling Han asked. He couldn't keep looking for pill recipes on the online platform, because higher-grade pills wouldn't be sold there. Mo Guahao was astonished. "You still have the spare energy to study other pill recipes." As he saw it, Ling Han would have to supply 10 alchemical pills every day, and at least 3 cauldrons worth of pills had to be completed. However, what elementary-level alchemist could guarantee that he would have a 100% success rate of pill completion, then this alchemist would definitely be making a huge profit. Ordinarily speaking, it was already very impressive that the pill completion rate could reach 30%. Thus, Ling Han had to concoct around 10 cauldrons of alchemical pills a day, and practically did not even have the time to sleep. So what time would he have left to study new pill recipes? However, since Ling Han had asked, Mo Guahao took out the optical computer and said, "These are the pill recipes that I have gathered. Which do you want, young friend? I'll give it to you." Pill recipes were the same as martial arts techniques. They were both incredibly valuable. So Mo Guahao saying these words really gave Ling Han a huge favor. Ling Han nodded and said, "Thank you, Boss Missouri." He began to read. There were about 100 pill recipes in Mo Guahao's collection, and they were divided into the 3 major categories of elementary level, middle level, and high level. For the elementary level category, the most practical ones were the Meridian Exploration Pill and the Mystical Power Pill. Ling Han only obtained a formula for the Mystical Power Pill. He didn't have the formula for the Meridian Exploration Pill yet, so he called out, "I'll learn the Meridian Exploration Pill first." Mo Guahao was surprised. Judging by Ling Han's tone, it was not enough that he had learnt this Meridian Exploration Pill, but he still wanted to learn other pill recipes in future. "Do you really have that much time?" "The specific pill recipe is on the optical computer. Just open it and you'll know," he said. He felt that Ling Han was young and impetuous, and that was why he wanted to learn everything. He thought too highly about himself. However, when he encountered more obstacles, his mentality would be adjusted. Ling Han examined it carefully, and very soon he had memorized all the ingredients and refinement techniques of the Meridian Exploration Pill. He ran through it in his mind. Compared to the Genesis world, the only difference in alchemy methods was that one used fire, while the other used formations to stimulate energy. Setting this aside, whether it was the Meridian Exploration Pill or the Mystical Power Pill, the difficulty of refining them was practically child's play. Ling Han dared to guarantee that even if he began to concoct alchemical pills now, he would still be able to easily concoct the Meridian Exploration Pill. He guaranteed a success on his first attempt. This was how confident the Alchemy Emperor was. "Then I'll take my leave first," Ling Han said. He had already completely grasped the Meridian Exploration Pill. The next question was whether he could improve the pill recipe and increase the chances of the Meridian Exploration Pill. "I'll send you down." Mo Guahao accompanied Ling Han downstairs and had the person in charge of the cashier bring 40,000 dark North coins to Ling Han. This was to pay for the 10 modified mystical power pills. Ling Han did not stand on ceremony either. In any case, Mo Guahao would definitely not lose out. The only difference was whether he earned more or less. "Uncle, I'll send young Master Han back," Pan, who suddenly said. Mo Guahao was surprised, since, when had this nephew of his become sensible, he naturally hoped to develop a good relationship with Ling Han. But because he was much older, it was very difficult for the two of them to have a common topic of conversation, which would be more convenient for Pan, who, However, he was worried that Pan Ho-hu would screw up the matter, and that what was intended to be a good deed would become bad. "You have to be careful," he warned. "I understand," Pan Hu said. Since his uncle valued Ling Han so much, he naturally would treat Ling Han as if he were his uncle. No. He would be even more respectful, because this was equivalent to bootlicking two people at once. "Young friend Ling, let Hu Zi send you off," Mo Guahao said with a smile. "You're all young people, so you should have something in common to talk about." Ling Han thought that he had lived for who knew how many years in the Genesis world, and was definitely an old monster. Who here would have a common topic with him? However, he didn't mind, so he nodded. "Young Master Han, please," Pan Hu said respectfully. His humble attitude was inconceivable to the staff in the shop. Since when had that second-generation young master become a completely different person? The two of them left. Along the way, Pan Hu carefully chose some interesting topics to share with Ling Han. He was an ignorant and incompetent person. The so-called interesting topics were all related to women, causing Ling Han to quickly show an expression of impatience. However, Pan, who was quite observant when it came to judging the mood, he hurriedly shut his mouth and didn't say anything. Meanwhile, he thought to himself, could it be that young Master Han doesn't like women? Hiss, if he didn't like women, then he liked men. Should he sell his A*S to gain Ling Han's favor? Forget it. This sacrifice was too great. At least for now, there was no need for it. They hailed a cab and returned to Ling Han's residence. Of course, Ling Han didn't need to pay, and Pan Hu rushed to pay. He even wanted to follow Ling Han into the residence and continue to develop friendly relations with him. But in the end, Ling Han tactfully refused. Pan, who wasn't too disappointed. After all, he had just defended Ling Han, and it was already very difficult for him to repair their relation to this extent. How could he hope to become Ling Han's best friend in an instant? He made up his mind. From tomorrow onwards, he would be the one to collect the medicine. In this way, he would be able to communicate and develop good relations with Ling Han every day. He was really too smart. After standing outside Ling Han's residence for a while, he took a cab back. The moment Ling Han returned to his quarters, he began to refine meridian exploration pills. He had a strong interest in alchemy. Sure enough, after only 2 hours, he successfully concocted the first cauldron of meridian exploration pills. The divine stone had boosted his luck and added with his natural talent in alchemy. It wasn't strange for him to succeed in one go. Ling Han tasted one and savored it carefully. After a while, he smiled and murmured, "I can increase its effects to 20%. Chapter 3173. 3173. Mo Guahao was dumbfounded. Chapter 3173. 3173. Mo Guahao was dumbfounded. 3173. Mo Guahao was dumbfounded. Inconceivable. Meridian exploration pill originated from the last era of civilization. To say nothing of predecessors, it had been passed down for more than 100 years, but no one had ever been able to improve it in the slightest. However, Ling Han had only refined it once, and after tasting it once, he already had a direction of how to improve it. Just how terrifying was this? Why do I feel that because this is the lowest grade of alchemical pill, and that's why it's so easy to improve? Ling Han frowned slightly. There was no need to mention the people of this era, because they had only advanced into martial arts for less than 100 years and had just begun. However, since the civilization of the last era could create so many pill recipes, formations, and contain the glorious era of martial arts, it meant that it was already a mature system. In such a mature environment, how could it be that no one could improve the pill recipe? It was very simple. Ling Han could easily sense what was wrong with the alchemical pill, and if it was too strong or too weak, he would need to add more or decrease some of the corresponding medicinal ingredients. But why did the ancients not discover anything? Could it be that after he had condensed the essence of the divine stone, his alchemy ability had reached a chilling extent. Or perhaps, Ling Han guessed, this was too worthless in the civilization of the last era, and that was why there was no smarter alchemist studying this problem to increase the effects of the alchemical pill. Which one was it? It was possible that it was both. On the one hand, Ling Han's ability in alchemy was too strong, and on the other, the Meridian Exploration Pill was perhaps really not much in the civilization of the last era, so no one had spent the effort to modify it. Forget about it. My priority now is to earn money. The modified Meridian Exploration Pill should be able to bring me more income. The Mystical Power Pill could only speed up one's cultivation. Whether there was one or not was only a matter of speed of cultivation. However, the effects of the Meridian Exploration Pill had been improved, yet they could allow those who initially could only stop at 10 meridians to reach 11 meridians, and people at 7 meridians would be able to reach 8 meridians. The significance of this was completely different. Ling Han would concoct 3 cauldrons of mystical power pills every day. Then, in addition to cultivating, he would focus his attention on improving the Meridian Exploration Pill. Having a direction was one matter, but as for how to improve it, this was a meticulous process. It could not possibly succeed in a single stroke. However, it was only 4 days, and Ling Han had already completed it. The effects have increased to 20%. Originally, the Meridian Exploration Pill could give a martial artist a 10% chance of sensing a new meridian, but now it had reached 20%. Even if it was only an additional 10% chance, it might give half of the majority a chance of advancing into a higher cultivation level. The significance of this was completely different. When Pan, who came again at night, Ling Han handed him 2 bottles of alchemical pills. Young Master Han, what's this bottle? Pan, who was curious. You can just hand it over to Boss Missouri, Ling Han said. Understood. Pan, who nodded, paused, then continued. Does young Master Han have any other commands? These few days he had acted like he was a servant, so his attitude could not be more humble. Go on. Ling Han waved him off. However, after only over an hour, Mo Guahao arrived with Pan, who by his side. Ling Han knew that the Meridian Exploration Pill would give Mo Guahao a great shock, but the fact that he immediately ran over in person was somewhat beyond Ling Han's expectations. Young friend, you are really good at scaring people. I am only 46 years old this year, but I am about to have a heart attack because of you, Mo Guahao said. Though he was joking, his expression still could not hide his shock. How could he not be shocked? Ling Han took the pill recipe with him. It had only been 5 days, but not only had he completely grasped the pill recipe and concocted alchemical pills, he had also improved the pill recipe and concocted new pills. Fuck, taking a step forwards with every passing day, how could this not scare him to death? Though he was a middle-level alchemist, in front of such a freakish alchemist, he felt extremely insignificant, as if he could vaguely see an alchemy grandmaster. Ling Han chuckled and said, It's just an increase of 10%. It's nothing. This was still considered nothing. Mo Guahao sighed and said, Young friend, do you know what this means? Using the new version of Mystical Power Pill and Meridian Exploration Pill together can increase the overall strength of our army by at least 10 times. This is a great merit. Ling Han chuckled. I just want to earn some money. This has nothing to do with earning money, Mo Guahao said with a smile. I plan to auction off the Meridian Exploration Pill. Only then would it be able to show the best effects. Do you agree? Sure. Ling Han nodded. Actually, if he opened his own store, the profits would definitely be higher, but that would be too troublesome. He had to cultivate martial arts and also concoct alchemical pills and formations. So where would he get so much time? Thus, he didn't mind letting others earn a little, so that he could free up his hands to do what he wanted. The time is set to be 3 days later. Mo Guahao continued, How about it? Previously, though he thought very highly of Ling Han, he still had the pride of a middle-level alchemist. It was only because Ling Han was an important business partner that he appeared very polite. However, now he really considered Ling Han to be in existence of the same level, or even in fact, slightly higher than himself. Even if Ling Han was only an elementary level alchemist now, just because he could improve on those 2-pill recipes, it was not impossible that the Alchemist Society of the Imperial Capital would make an exception and promote him to become a senior level alchemist. In fact, it was not impossible that he would even be bestowed the title of honorary Grandmaster. Before he knew it, Mo Guohao had already put away his airs. In fact, it could even be said that he was showing respect. All right. Ling Han nodded. When Pan, who saw this, he couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Young Master Han was really too awesome, that even his uncle was respectful in front of him. He was really too wise and managed to change his attitude in the nick of time. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to ride on Ling Han's coattail, he would even have offended an incredibly terrifying existence. Mo Guohao and Pan, who quickly left, while Ling Han practiced spiritual power for a while longer. This was really too difficult to improve. There was no cultivation technique, nor was there any treasured fruit. He could only depend on himself to improve bit by bit, which was really slow. Ling Han used the optical computer to connect to the online platform again. He wanted to see if there were any special treasures that could quickly increase his spiritual power. In the end, he was disappointed. He saw that a great many people had posted information asking for offers, wanting a treasured fruit called Amazing Cloud Fruit. This could increase one's spiritual power. At a glance, they were all asking to buy, but no one had reached a deal. Of course, these requests naturally came from formation masters and alchemists. The others didn't need to increase their spiritual power. He took a look. The amazing cloud fruit was produced in the Yudu Mountains, but this kind of treasured fruit was rare, and secondly, it grew in extremely dangerous places. The difficulty of harvesting it was like ascending the heavens, so there had always been no lack of buyers but a serious lack of sellers. At first, Ling Han wanted to put up a request for purchase as well, but looking at how others would easily offer a high price of over $1 million, if he did not put up a higher price, he would not be able to compete at all, and if he wanted to put up a request for purchase, he would need an advance payment. If he did not reach a deal, the advance payment would be directly refunded to him. He still couldn't take out a few million dark North coins now, so he could only give up on this idea. Work hard on concocting alchemical pills to earn money. Chapter 3174. 3174 Cutting the Line. Chapter 3174. 3174 Cutting the Line. 3174 Cutting the Line. In 3 days' time, Ling Han had concocted a total of 29 cauldrons of improved meridian exploration pills, which almost tired him to death. Since his cultivation level had reached a certain level, he had never been so tired from alchemy. However, he was also very satisfied, because he now had about 90 meridian exploration pills in his possession. This could probably bring him millions in income. It was really too easy for alchemists to earn money. Even formation masters couldn't compare. Because the staff of Mercy Medicine Hall were all very busy today, and even a second-generation young master like Pan who had to entertain profligate young masters, so he didn't come to pick Ling Han up. Ling Han didn't mind. It wasn't like he didn't have arms and legs, so how could he not go himself? He brought his little female attendant with him and called for a car. Very soon, they arrived at Mercy Medicine Hall. Goodness! He looked through the window and couldn't help but hiss. There were really a lot of people here today. The entrance was completely crowded with cars, and people were continuously disembarking. It should be known that these were only people who had gotten off the cars. After getting off, the cars would naturally leave, but even so, it was still on such a large scale. This was really a little exaggerated. Speaking of which, was the Meridian Exploration Pill that attractive? After quite a while, the car slowly arrived at the entrance, but before it had even stopped, a car suddenly cut in from behind and stopped in front of them. The car that Ling Han was in had to stop. When the person on the car in front of him got off and the car drove off, only then would his car be able to continue forwards. Cutting into the queue of people. No, cutting into the queue of cars. Ling Han was instantly enraged. Everyone was obediently lining up, and you're the only one who doesn't abide by the rules. DDD. The driver of Ling Han's car honked. He was also very displeased. A man and woman alighted from the car ahead of them. They were both very young. The man looked like the absolutely arrogant and snobbish type, while the woman was extremely beautiful and coquettish. After this man got out of the car, he walked over and kicked Ling Han's car. Pa! The headlight of the car was instantly crushed by his stomp. Motherfucker! What the fuck are you honking the horn for? Are you trying to kill me with your noise? The man continued to curse as he kicked the other headlight. The driver hurriedly alighted and asked, "Why did you smash my car?" "So what if I smash it?" The man was very arrogant. He pointed at the driver and said, "Do you know who I am? Fuck, you actually dare point at my nose. I think you're tired of living." He raised his hand and was just about to hit the driver, which scared the latter so much that he hurriedly ducked into the car. The man continued to curse, and the coquettish woman beside him also wore a haughty expression as she said, "To dare anger our young master Ming, you're truly seeking death." The car in front of them drove off, but the man still felt like he had not vented his anger enough. He continued to kick Ling Han's car endlessly. Ling Han alighted from the car. Huan Shui hurriedly opened the door and came down as well, standing beside Ling Han. Someone actually dares to come down? The man looked at Ling Han, but soon turned his gaze away and stared at Huan Shui. I didn't expect there to be a little beauty. Huan Shui couldn't be considered an exquisite beauty, but she was still above average. Ling Han beckoned with his hand and said, "Come here." The man faltered, then was amused and said, "You idiot, you actually dare to call me over? Who are you? Do you think you are the city lord?" However, even though he said this, he still walked over and said, "What's wrong? Do you still dare to hit me?" He moved one side of his face closer. "Come on then, give it a try." "Huan Shui." Ling Han said, "Yes, young master." Huan Shui hurriedly replied, "Slap him." "Yes." Huan Shui naturally carried out Ling Han's command without any reservations. She raised her hand and slapped the man heavily. How could the man have imagined that Huan Shui would really dare to make a move? He had also positioned himself as if he was ready to take a slap, so it was naturally impossible for him to dodge. This slap caused stars to appear in front of his eyes. It should be known that Huan Shui had now advanced further and possessed the cultivation level of 7 meridians. How could such a massive force be pleasant to the face? Fortunately, Huan Shui didn't use her full strength. Otherwise, his face would have been smashed into mush. "Why you dare to hit me?" The man faltered for a moment before revealing a furious expression. He also directed a slap at Huan Shui. Huan Shui dodged, then counterattacked. She was a 7 meridians, while that man was only a 6 meridians. Thus, after a few moves, Huan Shui was completely on the upper hand. Then, she slapped the man's face like she was spanking someone's behind. "Pa, pa, pa," a crisp and loud sound rang out. "What are you doing, you crazy woman? Let go of young Master Ming," the coquettish woman screamed. However, she wasn't a cultivator, so she could only yell from the sidelines. Isn't this Zhong Yangbi's younger brother, Zhong Yangming?" someone at the side asked. Though he is not much his older brother, Zhong Yangbi is quite extraordinary. He has already become an elementary-level alchemist at only 27 years old, and is renowned for being the second Mo Guahao. And Zhong Yangbi is really quite extraordinary. He is one of the most popular figures of the younger generation. He, together with Yan Jun and Tuoba Tianhuang, are known as the 3 elites, representing alchemy, formations, and the most outstanding talent in martial arts. However, to be honest, It is fortunate that Zhong Yangbi and Yan Jun are representatives of alchemy and formations. Otherwise, if it was martial arts, who would be able to match Tuoba Tianhuang? Indeed, Tuoba Tianhuang is a prodigy that would only appear once in 100 years in martial arts. In future, he would become an overlord that would look down on the rest of the world. He is definitely not someone that Zhong Yangbi and Yan Jun can compare to. We're getting off the topic. We're talking about Zhong Yangming now. Him? Just an idiot. However, to bully Zhong Yangbi's younger brother like this, isn't he afraid that Zhong Yangbi would be angered? That's right. Today is the auction hosted by Zhong Yangbi's master, Grandmaster Mo Guahao. He will definitely attend as well. If Zhong Yangbi finds out that he beat Zhong Yangming here, Zhong Yangbi will definitely not let the matter go. The people in the surroundings were all discussing spiritedly. The majority liked to join in on the excitement, and the scene that was happening now was obviously very much in line with the mentality of those watching the excitement. Did you hear that? Zhong Yangming roared. My brother is Zhong Yangbi, and my brother's master is Mo Guahao, Grandmaster Mo. If you anger me, I guarantee that you won't be able to buy an alchemical pill in Huju City. Ling Han merely chuckled and acted as if he had not heard. Pa! Huan Shui gave him a heavy slap. He actually dared to shout at her young master. Humph! Enough! Ling Han waved his hand, and Huan Shui immediately stopped. What's going on? Why are you making so much noise? A man walked out, an impatient expression on his face. Didn't he know that today was a big day for the Mercy Medicine Hall? Young master, who? Brother, who? Everyone called out, appearing very polite. This was Pan Hu. Though he was an idiot, he was Mo Guahao's nephew. It should be known that a few days ago, Mo Guahao had unveiled a modified version of the mystical power pill, and now there was a modified version of the Meridian Exploration pill being auctioned. Even the city lord had been alerted. He had expressed several times that this modification of Mo Guahao was a great merit and could be recorded in the history books, becoming a pillar of support for the nation. With the rise of the tide, Pan Hu also became extremely popular. Brother, who? Zhong Yangming pounced over with an aggrieved expression. Chapter 3175. 3175, Brother Who? Chapter 3175. 3175, Brother Who? 3175, Brother Who? What is it? When Pan Hu saw this, he asked calmly. Both he and Zhong Yangming were ignorant and incompetent second-generation young masters. However, in comparison, his status was much higher, so he naturally became Zhong Yangming's boss. Brother Who? I was bullied. You have to stand up for me. Zhong Yangming grabbed one of Pan Hu's arms, like a child who had been wronged, asking for help from his parents. Pan Hu couldn't help but show a proud expression and said, I really want to see which blind guy dares to bully my people. With the introduction of the modified version of the mystical power pill, whether it was the popularity of the Mercy Medicine Hall or Mo Guahao's personal reputation, they had all been raised to a new height, especially with the modified version of the Meridian Exploration pill, which made Mo Guahao seem practically like an alchemy legend. Even the city lord praised him endlessly. Under such circumstances as Mo Guahao's nephew, Pan Hu's status naturally rose accordingly. His opinion of himself was really soaring, and his whole person was also puffed up. Someone was bullying his underling. Humph! Just see how he would deal with the other. Brother Who? It's them. Zhong Yangming pointed at Ling Han and Huan Shui. Huh? What? When Pan Hu saw Ling Han, he felt a chill rise up from the soles of his feet, almost causing him to pass out in fright. This was Ling Han. Others might not know, but how could he not know? Whether it was the modified version of the mystical power pill or the Meridian Exploration pill, they were all provided by Ling Han. It was all because of Ling Han that his status had been able to soar madly in the last few days. To say nothing else, He still remembered the last time he offended Ling Han and was forced to kneel in public, which saved him from being punished by Mo Guahao. Had he not suffered enough? Had he not learnt his lesson? If he offended Ling Han again, it was not impossible that Mo Guahao would beat him to death. Brat, now that my boss is here, are you afraid? Zhong Yangming strutted around and even rushed over, pointing a finger at Ling Han. If it weren't for the fact that he was still wary of Huan Shui, his finger would probably be poking at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled. Hee, I'm afraid, of course I'm afraid. It's good that you know to be afraid. Kneel down. Zhong Yangming said proudly, regaining his usual arrogant demeanor. When he saw that Ling Han had no reaction, he couldn't help but urge. I told you to kneel, didn't you hear? Could it be that you want our brother Hu to tell you? Sure, Ling Han said. He looked towards Pan Hu and asked, Brother Hu, what do you say? Zhong Yangming also turned around. He was sure that Pan Hu would definitely fly into a thunderous rage and teach Ling Han a harsh lesson. Sure enough, Pan Hu walked over aggressively. What a great amount of anger. Zhong Yangming was slightly shocked. He had not thought that he was actually so important to Pan Hu. Otherwise, why would Pan Hu be so furious? He was getting closer and closer, and Pan, who had already raised one hand high before slapping it down. Wasn't this slap a little too early? Pa! A crisp sound reverberated in all directions. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. What was going on? Had Pan Hu gone mad, or was there something very seriously wrong with his eyes? He actually delivered a slap right onto Zhong Yangming's face. Brother Hu, you hit the wrong person. That be it starred is behind me. Zhong Yangming covered his face with one hand and said with an aggrieved expression, I didn't make a mistake, and I'm beating you up, be it starred. Pan Hu roared in fury. Pa, pa, pa. He rained down blows on Zhong Yangming, and he started to beat him up madly. You be it starred, do you know who Ling Han is? Are you trying to fucking kill me? Just see if I won't beat you to death. Zhong Yangming was completely stupefied. What had happened? Previously, he had been madly slapped by a woman, and now he was being beaten harshly by Pan Hu. He didn't seem to have done anything extremely evil that would deserve this. Brother Hu, what did I do wrong? Why did you hit me? He felt extremely aggrieved. Be at starred. When Pan Hu heard this, he was naturally even more enraged. You almost killed me, do you know that? Do you know who young Master Han is? He roared in fury. Young Master Han. Zhong Yangming was taken aback, his brain completely unable to process what had happened. Who was young Master Han? No matter what, there was no way he could connect young Master Han with Ling Han. How was this possible? He had naturally seen all of Brother Hu's friends, and this guy wasn't among them. Pung, pung, pung. After a series of blows, Pan Hu forced Zhong Yangming to kneel in front of Ling Han and said, Hurry up and kowtow and apologize to young Master Han. What? Young Master Han was this young man in front of him. Zhong Yangming finally understood why Pan Hu had hit him. He couldn't help but feel shocked. A person that even Brother Hu had to address as young master. What kind of background did he have? Who knows? A few words from him may be enough to decide his life or death. He finally knew fear and said in a trembling voice, Young Master Han, I was wrong. Kowtow. Pan, who actually kicked him. Fuck, even he had kowtowed a dozen over times on the streets back then. Could it be that he would be able to bluff his way out just like that? Zhong Yangming had no choice but to kowtow. Only then did Ling Han say calmly, You don't have to kowtow to me, but to this driver. He pointed at the driver that was still hiding inside the car. Zhong Yangming revealed an obvious look of resistance. He could bear it if he was kowtowing towards young Master Han. After all, even Brother Hu would have to address him as young master. But this driver? Fuck, if he had to apologize to a lowly driver, would he still be able to survive in the future? Pa, His hesitation was immediately followed by a slap from Pan Hu. Young Master Han told you to apologize, yet you still dare to hesitate. Do you believe that I'll thrash you to death? Pan Hu said in a vicious tone. In order to gain Ling Han's favor, he really dared to commit murder. Zhong Yangming finally became afraid. That cannibalistic expression on Pan Hu's face was definitely not an act. He said to the driver, The driver was filled with fear and trepidation. By now, he naturally knew who Zhong Yangming was. Being apologized to like this, would this cause a calamity to him in future? He was just an ordinary little driver, so how could he afford to trifle with a second-generation young master like Zhong Yangming? Ling Han naturally could tell that the driver was worried and said calmly, Don't worry. In future, even if you lose a single hair, I will still seek out second young master Zhong for an accounting. Zhong Yangming's eyes widened in shock. If he lost even a single strand of his hair, he was going to be called to account. Then he was really too wronged, wasn't he? Oh, if this guy was killed, then he would have to pay with his life as well. Ling Han cracked a smile. You guessed right, that's the logic. What logic? He was absolutely unreasonable. Hearing Ling Han say this, the driver finally felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. It was good that there was no future trouble. Young masters, I'll take my leave, he said. Wait, Ling Han said with a smile. Don't be anxious. I still haven't paid the fare, and I still haven't paid for the broken lights. No need, the driver hurriedly said. Of course, there is a need. Ling Han looked at Zhong Yangming and said, Whoever breaks it will be responsible for compensation, understand? Zhong Yangming had learnt his lesson this time, and hurriedly took out money of his own volition, stuffing a handful of money into the hands of the driver. It's too much. There's no need for so much. The driver was an honest person. Everyone watched in dumbfounded shock. Chapter 3176. 3176 Auction. Chapter 3176. 3176 Auction. 3176 Auction. Who was this guy? He actually managed to deal with two profligate second-generation young masters until they had become so submissive. The driver left, and order returned to this place. One after another, people disembarked from the cars, but they did not enter. They were all discussing on the sidelines. They wanted to know what great person Ling Han was, that he could actually make Pan Hu treat him with such respect. It definitely isn't Zhong Yangbi. Of course. If that person was Zhong Yangbi, Zhong Yangming wouldn't have come into conflict with him at all. Moreover, Zhong Yangbi wouldn't have been able to suppress Pan Hu like this. Could it be Yan Jun? That doesn't seem to be the case either. Yan Jun is already 24 or 25 years old, right? The age is not right. Furthermore, Yan Jun is also unable to suppress Pan Hu Hui. Then it would have to be Tuoba Tianhuang. That's right. Tuoba Tianhuang is around this age. He's the #1 cultivator of the younger generation, and he'll definitely become an overlord in the future. It's reasonable for Pan Hu to bootlick him like this. But Tuoba Tianhuang is already at 12 meridians. What is he doing here? That person isn't Tuoba Tianhuang. Tuoba Tianhuang's appearance is extremely unique. His hair isn't tied up, and he's wanton and unrestrained. He's definitely not that person. Furthermore, Pan Hu calls him Young Master Han. That's strange. What young man in the city has such might? The son of the city lord. The young master of the top clan, the Yen clan. But neither of their names have the word Han. Everyone was discussing spiritedly, but ultimately they could not guess Ling Han's identity. In truth, even if someone recognized Ling Han and said that he was a deputy captain of Xianqing Banner, it was guaranteed that no one would believe him. With Pan Hu leading the way, Ling Han entered the private room that had been prepared for him. As for Zhong Yangming, he couldn't be bothered to deal with him for the moment. He would deal with him when he returned. Fuck! He had almost ruined a matter of such importance for him. He really wanted to strangle this bee at starved to death. No one paid attention to Zhong Yangming. Occasionally, there would be mocking gazes sweeping over, making him feel extremely indignant. He was really dissatisfied. Most importantly, he didn't even know who Ling Han was. This beating really made him feel sullen. Yangming, what's wrong with you? A deep voice rang out, and behind Zhong Yangming a lanky man appeared. He looked to be in his late 20s. Brother! Zhong Yangming was overjoyed, and he immediately charged over. This gave Zhong Yangbi a scare. In such a public place, what kind of impropriety would it be for two men to be embracing each other? He stepped aside, not allowing Zhong Yangming to pounce on him head-on. However, one of his legs was still being hugged by Zhong Yangming, making him grit his teeth. This scene was still so beautiful that no one dared to look at it. "Let go," he whispered. "Brother, you must avenge me." Zhong Yangming had finally found a real great protector after much difficulty, so how could he possibly let go? Seeing this scene, the people in the surroundings all laughed. Zhong Yangbi felt his face burn. He hurriedly pulled his brother up by force. Pa, pa, pa! They ran into Mercy Medicine Hall. He was Mo Guohao's most outstanding disciple, and his status in the pharmacy was actually even higher than Pan Hu's. He too reserved a private room, and then asked his younger brother about the situation. When Zhong Yangming explained the situation in full detail, Zhong Yangbi's expression couldn't help but become dark. Humph! Aside from being arrogant and domineering, what else did A be at starred like Pan Hu know? And now it was even better. He was actually favoring an outsider, and was even bullying one of their own people now. This was practically betrayal. Zhong Yangming was afraid of Pan Hu, but he wasn't. In fact, he even looked down on him very much. "Don't worry, I will definitely stand up for you," Zhong Yangbi said. However, the auction was about to begin, so it was not appropriate for him to come into conflict with Pan Hu at this time. Thus, he decided to first wait for the auction to begin. This was something that Mo Guohao valued very much, so he definitely could not allow the slightest mistake. Towards Mo Guohao, he was sincerely impressed. In fact, he admired him from the bottom of his heart. He actually managed to improve the Meridian Exploration Pill and Mystical Power Pills recipe, creating the greatest miracle in the last 100 years of alchemy, benefiting the nation and the people, and may even be summoned by the Emperor in future. Thinking of this sovereign of the Dark North Nation, Zhong Yangbi couldn't help but feel even more reverent. That was really a legend, and in the whole country, who didn't treat him like a god? The auction soon began, and the host was actually Mo Guohao himself. Mercy Medicine Hall was a very big place. When it was first established, it was already thought that there might be an auction held in the future, so it had been developed in this direction when designing it. Before this, the Mercy Medicine Hall had already hosted several auctions. However, this was the first time that they had held an auction for a single type of medicine. Everyone welcome. Mo Guohao's face was glowing. Everyone has already seen the information. Today's auction is for the Modified Meridian Exploration Pill, which can increase the chances of sensing new meridians to about 20%. I guarantee with my reputation that this is definitely not the slightest bit false. Beneath him, there was a commotion. Everyone had received an invitation from Mercy Medicine Hall and knew that a Modified Meridian Exploration Pill had appeared, which was why they had rushed over. Now, with Mo Guohao personally explaining about it, everyone was naturally extremely excited. This meant that the cultivation level of many people that had already stagnated could improve again. I have a total of 90 Meridian Exploration Pills here. The rules of the auction are as follows. Every 10 pills is a set and will be auctioned by set. In other words, everyone has 9 chances to win the bid. Fuck! Hearing these words, Everyone wanted to curse Mo Guahao and call him an unscrupulous merchant. If they were auctioned off one by one, there would be a total of 90 pills. At least half of them would not be auctioned off for a very high price. After all, there were a lot of them, so they would just wait for the next one. But it was a different story now. There were only a total of 9 sets. They had to give it their all. Mo Guahao smiled brightly. Though he was an alchemist, he was also an outstanding businessman, and maximizing his profits was his pursuit. Then let's begin. The auction began, and it was as if everyone had been pumped full of adrenaline. They immediately placed a crazy bid, as if that was not money, but merely a number. The first set of Meridian Exploration pills sold for a high price of $260,000, and the average price for each was $26,000. Meanwhile, the ordinary Meridian Exploration pills only sold for $5,000 each. The difference was truly huge. The following auction was still very heated because there were only 9 sets. It only took an hour, and the 9 sets of Meridian Exploration pills were all auctioned off, fetching a total of 2,520,000 dark North coins. This was a very shocking number. Ling Han believed that if he were to sell them himself, it would be very good if he could get even half the price. That was because Mo Guahao and Mercy Medicine Hall itself were a signboard, and this was intangible value. Of course, there were only a total of 90 Meridian Exploration pills. This was also a very important reason. After all, the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. However, Mo Guahao's words at the end almost drove those who had managed to win with their bid mad, and those who had not managed to successfully buy any once more became excited. In the future, every week, Mercy Medicine Hall will hold an auction, which includes but is not limited to the modified Meridian Exploration pill. Fuck, profiteering merchant. What a profiteering merchant. Too deceitful, too black-hearted. Chapter 3177. 3177 Complaint. Chapter 3177. 3177 Complaint. 3177 Complaint. Young Master Han, I'll bring you to see Uncle, Pan, who said respectfully. Goodness, in just 3 days' time, young Master Han had concocted 90 Meridian Exploration pills, creating such terrifying wealth. In comparison, the pocket money, or rather salary, he received every month was only 8,000. It was practically too inferior. This was how prodigies were. If they wanted to earn money, they could simply stretch out their hands. He was so awesome that he could only admire him. Ling Han nodded, and with Pan, who leading the way, went to meet Mo Guahao. They had just arrived at the doors of the study on the 2nd floor when they saw 2 more people walk over. Zhong Yangbi and Zhong Yangming. Brother, it's them. As the saying went, when enemies met, they would naturally be furious. Zhong Yangming immediately pointed at Ling Han, his expression looking as if he wanted to devour him. Afterwards, he naturally found out that Ling Han was the mastermind. That little beauty was only obeying Ling Han's words. Zhong Yangbi humphed and said, Pan Hu, you have to give me an explanation for this matter. Otherwise, I will report this to my master, and you will definitely be punished. This guy was always neglecting his proper duties and doing all kinds of bad things. He had long since been disliked by Mo Guahao. However, because he was his nephew, he did not chase him away. Thus, every time he mentioned complaining in front of Mo Guahao, Pan, who would definitely be scared half to death, and immediately beg for mercy. However, he had miscalculated this time. Pan, who was all smiles, and said, What explanation? There's nothing to explain. He had always been suppressed by Zhong Yangbi, and furthermore, because the latter had snitched on him, causing him to be scolded many times by Mo Guahao. How could he not feel angered? Unfortunately, Zhong Yangbi was an alchemy prodigy, and Mo Guahao was extremely fond of him. How could he win over him? He didn't even have the chance to take revenge. But this time was different. Who was Ling Han? Someone that even Mo Guahao had to respect, and you dare to disrespect him? You are seeking death. Pan Hu, it's fine if you commit evil at other times, and for the sake of Master, I can turn a blind eye. But this time, you actually bullied my brother. I definitely can't tolerate you anymore. Zhong Yangbi said balefully, Brother Bai, don't you think you're the one who's doing evil now that you're making malicious accusations without investigating the truth? Pan, who said with confidence, this was the first time he realized that reasoning could actually be so enjoyable. Zhong Yangbi was taken aback. Since when had this guy become so stubborn? Usually, when had it not been him who only had to wear a solemn expression, and the other party would cower like a dog? Had the sun risen from the west? Pan Hu, are you really going to turn this into a serious matter? His expression darkened. What serious matter? Mo Guahao's voice was heard. Very soon he walked over, his face full of smiles. He was in an extremely good mood. Master! Zhong Yangbi hurriedly exclaimed, not giving Pan Hu the chance to speak first. I originally didn't want to ruin Master's mood, but Hu Zi has really gone too far this time. Mo Guahao gave an "oh" and asked, What's going on? He knew that this nephew of his was very unreasonable. However, after he had recently gotten together with Ling Han, he had actually changed his habit of leading a life of debauchery, bullying the weak and suppressing the good, which made him very pleased. What was it? It had only been a few days, and he had gone out of control again. He turned to look at Pan, who, his gaze extremely sharp. However, when he saw Ling Han, his expression immediately softened, and he said, Young friend Ling, I have embarrassed himself in front of you. Pooh! Zhong Yangbi spluttered and coughed uncontrollably. What was going on here? He couldn't understand. Ling Han smiled and said, I think that Pan Hu is honest, young and promising. Being praised by Ling Han like this, Pan Hu felt his face burn. Fuck! What relation did he have with being honest? His mind was filled with thoughts of women and fun. He was indeed young. But what kind of promising man was he? Mo Guahao was taken aback. Ling Han actually had such a high opinion of Pan Hu? Could it be that he had misjudged this nephew? He turned to look at Zhong Yangbi and asked, How has Hu Zi gone too far? This, Zhong Yangbi hesitated. As long as he wasn't an idiot, he could tell how highly Mo Guahao thought of Ling Han, completely treating him as an equal. If he were to retaliate against Ling Han, the only result would be being harshly reprimanded by Mo Guahao, and then let Pan Hu watch a good show. And nothing, he said. Mo Guahao was astounded. Just now he had said that he had gone too far, so why was everything all right now? Don't worry about young friend Ling. He's one of us, he said with a chuckle. He thought that Zhong Yangbi was trying to save some face for Pan Hu in front of outsiders. That's right, Brother Bai. What did I do wrong? Tell me, and I will definitely accept humbly and immediately change. Pan, who took the chance to hit him when he was down. It was rare for him to have such a rare opportunity, so he naturally could not waste it. Looking at Zhong Yangbi's expression, he was filled with satisfaction. Following Ling Han was the right thing to do. He immediately turned the tables around and was singing the Song of Freedom. Zhong Yangbi was on the verge of tears. He didn't dare to speak ill of Ling Han now. I'm really fine. I was muddle-headed, he said. This time, he had to swallow this humiliation. Strange. Mo Guahao glanced at this disciple of his and felt a little suspicious in his heart. However, this suspicion was quickly concealed by his joy, and he said, Young friend Ling, I'm really too happy today. He invited Ling Han into the study, and how could Zhong Yangbi have the face to stay any longer? He hurriedly left with his brother. Mo Guahao and Ling Han settled the accounts. For the auction, Mercy Medicine Hall collected 20% as service fee. This was a little high, but taking into account Mo Guahao's part in it, 20% for commission was reasonable. Ling Han nodded. He could still obtain around 2 million. This was already an astonishing amount of wealth. However, young friend, you are really too amazing. It has only been a short few days, and you have already concocted so many meridian exploration pills. This is really unbelievable. Mo Guahao sighed ruefully. Even if he went all out, could he concoct so many meridian exploration pills in 3 to 4 days? Impossible. His success rate was at most 50%. Even if he did not sleep at all these 4 days, there was no way he could complete such a mission. In other words, Ling Han's success rate had to reach 80% or even higher to be able to accomplish such a magnificent feat. Inconceivable, this was too shocking. Ling Han merely smiled. There was not the slightest bit of difficulty in concocting this kind of low-level alchemical pill. If the cauldron still exploded, would he still be worthy of the title of Alchemy Emperor? Oh, that's right. The city lord should summon you in a few days so you can make some preparations, Mo Guahao said seriously. After modifying the pill recipes for the Meridian Exploration Pill and the Mystical Power Pill, to say nothing of the city lord, if the Emperor of the Dark North Nation found out, he would probably make an exception and summon Ling Han to see him, because this was extremely likely to have far-reaching consequences. Ling Han didn't mind this, and simply nodded in acknowledgement. Now, though he had to start from the beginning again, how could his proud and aloof heart possibly change? Mo Guahao's opinion of this young man became gradually higher. Now he was already so calm and unflustered in the face of honor and favor. This kind of mentality was really rare. His future accomplishments would be limitless. They conversed for a while, and Ling Han left with his little handmaiden. Chapter 3178. 3178 Rich Man's Formation. Chapter 3178. 3178 Rich Man's Formation. 3178 Rich Man's Formation. Ling Han returned to his residence, switched on the optical computer, and posted an offer to purchase. Request for amazing cloud fruit. Offer price is 2 million Dark North coins. Once this purchase offer was posted, it immediately attracted heated discussions, with many leaving comments below the post. Who would be so unruly and offer such a high price? That's right. Isn't this ruining the market price? Those two above must be jealous because they don't have the money. Who made it a rule that there must be a price restriction for buyers? This one is a real tycoon indeed. Let's be friends. However, even if such a high price as 2 million is being offered, it's certain that there still won't be a deal. That's right. In the first place, amazing cloud fruits are rare, and with how difficult it is to harvest, there is absolutely no way to obtain them. There were also a great many people who requested for Ling Han's contact information, saying that they wanted to have a private chat, but Ling Han directly ignored them. All he wanted was the amazing cloud fruit, and he was completely uninterested in anything else. Since he had nothing else to do, he began to look around on the platform again. There are formations like this. The Thousand Clouds formation requires 30,000 jade seeds to be channeled. Once it begins, it can't be stopped. Refining the essence of all the jade seeds and transforming them into extremely dense energy can create an astonishing environment for cultivation. The time needed is only half a day. Ling Han couldn't help but feel tempted. If he really created such formations, just how much would his cultivation level advance? However, this formation was also called a rich man's formation, because if one was not a tycoon, how could he bear to use such an exorbitant amount as 30,000 jade seeds? Trill. The advancement in cultivation level by this half a day must be astonishingly fast. But if compared to the mystical power pill that was of the same value, the final result would definitely be that it would be more worthwhile to consume the mystical power pill. Furthermore, the advancement would not be just one-fold or two-fold, but rather tenfold or hundredfold. The only advantage of this rich man's formation was that it was fast and suited for speedy advancement. 30,000 jade seeds, or 3 million Dark North coins, is more than my net worth. However, I can give it a try. Ling Han was never stingy when it came to spending money. What was the point of not using the money he earned? He took a look. The principles of this formation were actually very simple. The only requirement was the jade seed, and a great number of jade seeds at that. It could be considered a super spirit gathering formation. I can't afford it now, so I'll just wait a few days. With the help of the modified version of the mystical power pill, Ling Han was confident that he could reach the 11 meridians in 10 days. Then, if this rich man's formation was powerful enough, he would be able to reach the 12 meridians in a short amount of time. Then, in the martial arts tournament, he really could ignore anyone. And I'll go and find old geezer Niu tomorrow. On the second day, he went to find Niu Huaqing. You want the 1,000 clouds formation. Even Niu Huaqing, who had commanded the winds and clouds all those years ago and treated money as dirt, was still shocked by Ling Han. This is the rich man's formation. Are you sure you possess the wealth of 3 million? No, Ling Han replied with a shake of his head. Right now, he only had over 2 million. Moreover, he had already paid 2 million in advance, so he would only be able to get it back if there was no deal within the next 3 days. However, he immediately continued, In another 6 days, I'm sure I will. 6 days later, the Mercy Medicine Hall would host the second auction. He was sure that earning 1 million wouldn't be a problem at all. Niu Huaqing looked at Ling Han in disbelief. Was this brat simply boasting? Did you think that money was so easy to earn? Even for him, if he wanted to earn 3 million in a short period of time, he would have to create a high-level formation. Unfortunately, that was in the past. The current him, sigh, let's not talk about it. Do you want to make another bet? Ling Han asked with a smile. Niu Huaqing wanted to agree at once, but after some thought, this brat was indeed freakish. Not only was he a formations prodigy, he was also freakish in alchemy. Previously, hadn't he been taken by surprise and lost a bet? The Meridian Exploration Pill that M.O. Guahao auctioned off yesterday. Could it be related to you, brat? He suddenly exclaimed in shock, but after some thought he shook his head. Impossible. This is a great dilemma that has troubled alchemy for 100 years. If you can solve it so soon after you come, that would be too inconceivable. Ling Han faltered for a moment. The old geezer was quite capable of making connections, but he wasn't bold enough. I'm leaving, he said. He had already found the method to create the 1,000 clouds formation. The other problem was how to get 30,000 jade seeds. Hey, where on earth are you going to get so much money from, brat? Niu Huaqing asked curiously. He was sure that Ling Han definitely didn't just want to learn this formation technique. Ling Han didn't reply and simply waved his hand. Every day he would concoct some meridian exploration pills and mystical power pills. Then he would continue cultivating, pushing his cultivation level to advance towards 11 meridians. 2 days later, no one accepted the purchase offer that he had posted. The advance payment was automatically returned. Another 4 days later, Mercy Medicine Hall held the second auction. This time, there were even fewer meridian exploration pills. There were only 50, and yet they were auctioned off for a high price of 30,000 per pill. The total price was 5 million. Ling Han obtained another million in wealth all of a sudden. He went to buy the jade seeds. It was easy to pay. He only had to press his finger, and once the fingerprint was matched successfully, the money would automatically be transferred away. There was absolutely no need for him to bring cash with him. But to transport the 30,000 jade seeds back, he would need the shop to send out a car and deliver it. Now, everything was already prepared, and all that was left was for him to break through to 11 meridians. Soon. At most, it would take another 2 days. However, on the same day, he was summoned by the city lord and made a trip. Feng Zixing, the city lord of Huju City, looked to be only in his 40s, his whole body exuding an astonishing vitality, as if he was a fierce beast that could burst out with astonishing power with a single move. He praised Ling Han for a while, but did not say anything specific. The time for an audience with him was even shorter than 5 minutes. After that, he had Ling Han return. What is the cultivation level of this Feng Zixing? Standing in front of him, I feel completely suppressed. It shouldn't be blood transformation tier, but rather a cultivation level above the blood transformation tier. However, no one has ever told me what cultivation level is above the blood transformation tier. Ling Han returned home. He decided to set aside these things first. What he had to do now was charge towards the 11 meridians, then the 12 meridians, and then the blood transformation tier. No matter where he was, strength was the true way to go, the true foundation, and everything that mattered. 2 days later, Ling Han had already reached the peak stage of 10 meridians. I can now attempt to break through to 11 meridians. Ling Han went to sense the 11th meridian. He didn't need the help of the meridian exploration pill at all, and he quickly sensed it. Then he guided heaven and earth's mystical power to charge at it, opening the meridian in a single strike. However, when the sun rose, the time that was suitable for cultivating had already passed. Activate the rich man's formation. Ling Han set up the 1,000 clouds formation. The 30,000 jade seeds were divided into 10 piles, and they were all like small mountains, looking extremely majestic. Come on. He used his spiritual power to stimulate the formations. Instantly, the 10 piles of jade seeds lit up. Then, pa, 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 one after another, the jade seed shattered. A soft jade light rose, turning into some kind of mysterious power that surged towards Ling Han. Boom! Ling Han felt his body tremble, and an incredibly deep power surged over madly. He hurriedly channeled the brother monkey cultivation technique to absorb as much power as possible. Otherwise, if it overflowed out of the formations, it would be a complete waste. Chapter 3179. 3179, kneeling firmly. Chapter 3179. 3179, kneeling firmly. 3179, kneeling firmly. Boom! The 11th meridian was presently widening like crazy. The power that surged in was really too shocking. It washed over and over again through Ling Han's meridians, removing the impurities, making them even wider. There was no time limit. As long as the formation was still channeling, this kind of power would be endless. The 30,000 jade seeds seemed to be burning, releasing their essence, turning into endless energy to feed Ling Han. 11 meridians, middle stage, late stage, peak stage, the speed of advancement was astonishingly fast. However, he had more or less exhausted the pile of jade seeds. It was really a rich man's formation. In just half a day, 30,000 jade seeds, which was equivalent to 3 million dark north coins, were gone just like that. Just a little bit more. Ling Han thought to himself. He began to charge towards 12 meridians. He had sensed it. He guided the last bit of power to attack. Boom, boom, boom. Like floodwaters crashing onto the shore, very quickly the blocked meridians were opened, completing the first circulation. At this point, all 12 meridians had been unlocked. This was the pinnacle of meridian opening tier. Brother, a voice suddenly rang out in Ling Han's mind. This was Brother Monkey. Ling Han was shocked. Brother Monkey had escaped. Don't be nervous. This is something that old Sun left in your head long ago. It will only be triggered when you reach 12 meridians. Brother Monkey's voice sounded again. So that was how it was. Ling Han nodded. What did Brother Monkey want to say to him that he had to do this? Previously, your cultivation level was too low, so it was meaningless to say anything. Thus, old Sun stayed until this moment. Brother Monkey continued. In the ordinary sense, the peak stage of the meridian opening tier is indeed the 12 meridians. However, if you want to pursue the pinnacle level, then you've only walked half the path of the meridian opening tier. Aside from the 12 true meridians, there are also 8 extraordinary meridians in the human body. Extraordinary 8 meridians, also known as the hidden meridians. The difficulty of sensing them is 10 times more than the true meridians. Thus, there are pitifully few who can open the extraordinary meridians. However, in order to reach the peak of cultivation, you have to do what others can't. Brother, don't covet advancement. Although meridian opening tier is insignificant, it's the foundation of a tall building. If the foundation isn't strong enough, there's no need to mention anything else. Remember. Ling Han listened quietly, but after committing it to memory, the monkey's voice no longer rang out. He mumbled. Brother Monkey didn't say at the time, probably because he was afraid of hurting me. Hee. Brother Monkey doesn't know that my willpower is tenacious. My goal was actually to break through to the pinnacle of every cultivation level. To be like everyone else means the person is destined to disappear within the masses. Therefore, to really be outstanding, relying on one's meridians being wider as compared to others is not sufficient. I still need to open up more meridians. Then, if I can open up an extraordinary meridian, would it be comparable to the blood transformation tier? It'll probably be very difficult. After all, that is the gap between major tiers. But I'm sure that after opening up 4 to 5 meridians, my strength should not be inferior to that of the blood transformation tier. All right, I'll work hard to earn money, and then set up another rich man's formation. The jade seeds had already been exhausted, and Ling Han stood up. He had initially thought that he would be able to break through to blood transformation tier, but unexpectedly he had only cultivated halfway through meridian opening tier. If he wanted to quickly increase his cultivation level, he would need to use the rich man's formation or natural treasures, such as the volcanic fruit. However, how could natural treasures be obtained just because he wanted them? Thus, it was naturally the former that was more practical. Ling Han began to concoct alchemical pills with all his might. Every single alchemical pill was a cornerstone for him to increase his strength. With one more alchemical pill, the cornerstone would be slightly more stable. He had tremendous pressure and motivation to earn money, so he began to attempt concocting 2 cauldrons worth of alchemical pills at once. Nothing was impossible. If he didn't try, how could there be a miracle? Moreover, this was only the lowest grade of alchemical pill, so there shouldn't be any problem. At this moment, Ling Han's meticulous control over his spiritual power finally revealed its might. He was able to multitask and take care of everything completely. Then could he concoct 3 cauldrons at the same time? With the motivation to earn money, Ling Han became even more fervent. 3 cauldrons, yes, he could. Then, for cauldrons could work too. 5 cauldrons. 5 cauldrons had failed. Ling Han shook his head. Right now, his limit was to multitask with 4 cauldrons. He couldn't divert any more attention. Otherwise, he would only ruin the entire situation. So be it if it was 4 cauldrons. At least, his efficiency had increased by 3 times. After 7 days, Ling Han had concocted a total of close to 900 meridian exploration pills. Even he found this a little hard to believe. This was really too crazy. And when Emo Guohao received these alchemical pills, he almost knelt on the ground. Even the reincarnation of the god of medicine would only be like this, right? Here, take my knees. I'm kneeling firmly. He already didn't know what else to say. Was this still an elementary level alchemist? No, even grandmasters would probably be dumbfounded and sigh in inferiority if it was merely in terms of the concoction of meridian exploration pills. This young man was going to become the legendary god of alchemy. With so many meridian exploration pills, it is impossible to auction them off all at once. That way, it would not be able to get such a high price. After calming down, Emo Guohao returned to his true nature as a businessman. Ling Han nodded. You can slowly auction it off, but I need an advance payment. How much? Emo Guohao asked. Maybe 10 million, Ling Han said. Emo Guohao gritted his teeth. Ling Han was really not treating him with reserve. However, a meridian exploration pill was worth more than 20,000, and Ling Han could obtain at least 20,000. With close to 900 meridian exploration pills being produced, it was actually not too much for Ling Han to ask for an advance of 10 million. All right. He nodded. Actually, he did not have that much liquid funds and needed to borrow some. But with his present reputation and status, what private bank would reject him? Mo Guahao was efficient in doing business, and in just 2 days he had transferred all 10 million dark North coins into Ling Han's account. Ling Han was extremely pleased. He could splurge for 3 more times. He bought another 90,000 jade seeds and practically gave the boss a fright. This guy was too rich and willful, wasn't he? When the jade seeds had been delivered, Ling Han activated the 1,000 Clouds formation again. There were too many elites in the Dark North Nation. Merely having the title of Formation Master and Alchemist was not enough. Only true strength was what one could truly rely on. Boom! The rich man's formation was activated, and a large amount of mystical power surged out once more, surging towards Ling Han. Come, come, come. Ling Han channeled the brother monkey cultivation technique, stimulating this power to circulate within his body. The 12 true meridians were rapidly widening, and in just half a day he had reached the pinnacle, unable to go any further. Otherwise, his meridians would only be shattered. All right, I'll sense for the extraordinary 8 meridians. Ling Han thought for a moment, then ingested a meridian exploration pill, though he was confident in himself. With something that could clearly decrease the difficulty level, why did he have to make things difficult for himself? Just as Brother Monkey had said, the extraordinary 8 meridians were too difficult to sense, even with the help of the meridian exploration pill. And the meridian exploration pill should be more suitable for sensing the ordinary meridians. If one were to explore extraordinary meridians, its effectiveness might drop to 5% or even lower. Ling Han used his mental power and similarly examined himself, looking for a breakthrough point. Huan Shui, come. Chapter 3180. 3180 Extraordinary 8 Meridians. Chapter 3180. 3,180 Extraordinary 8 Meridians. 3180 Extraordinary 8 Meridians. Once the rich man's formation was activated, there was no way to stop, unless the energy was exhausted. At present, Ling Han was just looking for the meridian. He only needed a little bit of energy, and it would be a waste if he spent too much. There was no meridian for him to expand. Hence, it could not be wasted. The little handmaiden entered into the formation and absorbed the majestic energy. Her cultivation level instantly soared. The energy that she needed did not have to be too pure. From this aspect, the speed of her cultivation was enough to be 10 times faster than Ling Han. However, the efficiency of the Xian Huang technique was far from being comparable to the Brother Monkey cultivation technique. Thus, if Ling Han were to cultivate under normal conditions, it would actually be Ling Han that would be advancing slightly faster. Ling Han ignored her and focused completely on himself, exploring the first of the extraordinary 8 meridians. After about an hour, his body suddenly trembled, and he opened his mouth, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "Young master, what's wrong?" Huan Shui hurriedly went to help him. The formation had stopped channeling half an hour ago, and the jade seeds had been completely expended. "I'm fine," Ling Han said with a smile, an expression of wild joy on his face. He found the first extraordinary meridian, but because the formation had stopped, he couldn't extract any power from it, so he couldn't open it. Ling Han placed the jade seeds in their proper positions and began again. Boom! The surging power came again. Ling Han guided this power and opened up the first extraordinary meridian. Then he expanded it again and again, and his cultivation level increased extremely quickly. Another half-day passed, and Ling Han finally stopped. The first extraordinary meridian had already been expanded to the extreme. He did not use the last batch of jade seeds because he first had to sense the second extraordinary meridian, which he would use the morning's cultivation time to open, and then use the rich man's formation to expand it to the extreme. Unfortunately, Ling Han didn't sense the second extraordinary meridian on the morning of the second day, which made him slightly disappointed. He turned on the optical computer and started to search on the online platform. He couldn't find any information about the extraordinary 8 meridians. Finally, he issued a bounty, and only then did someone answer. The extraordinary 8 meridians are known as the hidden meridians. It's said that it also belongs to the meridian opening tier. In other words, the maximum limit for the meridian opening tier is 20 meridians. But for a long time, I've never heard of anyone unblocking an extraordinary meridian. It's just a legend. It's still a rumor. The extraordinary 8 meridians are the Du Meridian, Rin Meridian, Chong Meridian, Dan Meridian, Yang Wei Meridian, Yin Wei Meridian, Yin Chi Meridian, and Yang Chi Meridian. However, only their names are known, and it's hard to confirm whether they are real or fake. Though there was very little information, it was at least the only introduction to the extraordinary 8 meridians that Ling Han had obtained. Thus, he readily approved of this answer and paid. In any case, it was not expensive, just 1 yuan. Unfortunately, Brother Monkey didn't say anything else, causing me to only be able to grope around blindly. Thankfully, I only have to continue sensing my meridians. Another day later, Ling Han finally sensed the second hidden meridian. He used the mystical power that came with dawn to open it, and then used the rich man's formation to expand it to its limit. 1 is on my back, 1 is on my abdomen, like 1 yin and 1 yang. Vaguely, my 12 meridians have also converged with them, and there is some kind of connection. My meridians are clear. I feel like there seems to be a great dragon hidden in my body, possessing the power to overturn rivers and seas. Oh, that's right. I should go and test out my current strength. He ran to the camp of the Xianqing banner. Because it was night and he kept a very low profile, only the guards knew that he had come, and did not alert anyone else. He arrived at the training ground and found a strength tester. Pung, he shot out a punch, and as a result, it was a tragedy. This strength tester had actually been smashed by him forcefully, producing a loud sound. Fuck! Ling Han hurriedly broke into a run, because he had already heard the commotion. A great many people were rushing over. He ran out, and after a while, 3 people came out of the training ground, discussing animatedly. How strange. Who would be so bored to actually dismantle the strength tester? It couldn't have been damaged by someone, right? How could that be? That's enough to withstand the power of the peak stage of the 12 meridians. When have you seen any captains destroy the strength tester during any demonstrations? But who would deliberately destroy the strength tester? Freak, right? A psycho. Retard. The 3 of them came to a conclusion, and thought that this person must be mentally abnormal. Fuck! Ling Han immediately dashed out from the shadows. Captain Ling! When the 3 people saw Ling Han, their faces were filled with pleasant surprise and incomparable admiration. In the end, they were violently thrashed by Ling Han and screamed in pain. However, after Ling Han stopped, he tossed each of them a meridian exploration pill, which could be considered as medical compensation. Hiss, what's wrong with Captain Ling? Why did he beat us up without rhyme or reason? Did he have his heart broken or something? This is meridian exploration pill. Fuck, that's 5,000 per pill. We've made a profit this time. If being beaten up can be traded for a meridian exploration pill, I'm willing to be trampled on every day. Captain Ling is too awesome. The 3 of them were confused at first, but soon became excited if they knew that this was the modified meridian exploration pill. They would definitely be even more pleasantly surprised. Aren't you on leave? Why have you come here? A cold voice rang out from behind Ling Han. Ling Han turned around, only to see Lien Xuerong standing behind him. He smiled and said, "Banner Lord, I came to test my strength. You broke through to 11 meridians." Lien Xuerong asked, surprise flashing across her pretty face. It had only been less than a month, and this brat had already advanced from 10 meridians to 11 meridians. This was truly amazing. "And now it's the peak stage of the 12 meridians," Ling Han said. Lien Xuerong's expression instantly froze. 12 meridians? Was that possible? It had not even been a month. "Do you think it will be like when you have just begun cultivating?" Then, with the spirit gathering formation, one can indeed achieve the miracle of breaking through to 2 consecutive levels in a single month. "All right, attack me with all your might," she recovered. "Sure." Ling Han waved his fist, using Lien Xuerong as a strength tester. He wanted to see how far he was from the blood transformation tier after opening 2 extraordinary meridians. Lien Xuerong almost couldn't stop herself from kicking him. This brat's gaze was really too despicable. "Come," she said coldly. She made up her mind to return Ling Han's punch with a palm strike to teach this brat a lesson. Ling Han gathered all his power and then shot out a punch. This punch was extraordinarily fast. The power of the punch compressed the air, emitting sonic booms. As the force was released, it actually turned into a fist that was visible to the naked eye, that shot towards Lien Xuerong. This was because the speed of the punch was too fast, reaching or even surpassing the transmission of sound, so that the power of the punch became visible to the naked eye. Lien Xuerong instantly looked shocked. It should be known that even a 12 meridians peak stage martial artist could not possibly make the speed of his fist reach the speed of sound. This was an ability that could only be possessed by a blood transformation tier elite. Thus, when she saw the momentum of Ling Han's punch, she was naturally stunned. If she didn't know that this guy was Ling Han, she would really think that it was a blood transformation tier elite making a move. Pum! The punch arrived. Chapter 3181. 3181 Blood, changing 5 transformations. Chapter 3181. 3181 Blood, changing 5 transformations. 3181 Blood, changing 5 transformations. Lien Xuerong lightly sent out a palm strike, blocking this punch from Ling Han. Their fist and palm didn't truly come into contact. Instead, they were separated by at least 6 meters, and a fierce collision of power had already taken place. The dust on the ground was sent flying, turning into a mushroom cloud. Ling Han felt a powerful power rebound back at him, causing him to involuntarily retreat continuously. On the other hand, Lien Xuerong was standing firmly. Sigh. This was still inferior to blood transformation tier. "Are you trying to defy the heavens?" Lien Xuerong couldn't help but exclaim. "Am I?" Ling Han shook his head and said, "I'm considerably inferior to you." Lien Xuerong was speechless for a moment. "Brat, could it be that you want to defeat me with the cultivation level of meridian opening tier?" She shook her head. "Do you know what cultivation level I am at?" "Blood transformation tier," Ling Han said. This wasn't a secret. "I am indeed a blood transformation tier cultivator, but blood transformation tier is the same as meridian opening tier. It is similarly divided into several minor levels of cultivation level." Lien Xuerong said seriously, "Blood transformation tier. As the name goes, one has to transform all the blood in one's body. Ordinary blood is red. So after the first change, the blood turns purple. In a fierce battle, one can make the blood boil, and for a short period of time, burst out with twice, or even 3 times his usual power. In the second transformation, the purple blood turns black, and the blood is so strong that it solidifies and forms pillars. This is called the condensed blood pillar. In the third change, the black blood turns silver, and blood can condense into the appearance of a fierce beast from the ancient age. It would soar out, and could kill with its aura alone. This is called the condensed blood beast. In the fourth transformation, the silver blood turns gold, and blood can be condensed into a weapon, and the murderous aura becomes even stronger. In the fifth transformation, golden blood turns into crystalline color, and blood condenses into a human form that has endless uses. Lien Shuarong spoke of the 5 levels of the blood transformation tier, paused, and said, "I am now in the 3rd transformation, condensed blood beast." As she spoke, silver-colored blood rose from her body, turning into a 3-legged bird, endless viciousness surging out from it. Even with Ling Han's temperament, he still faltered. This 3-legged bird made him feel a strong pressure. Even if it was just staring at him like that, it was enough to greatly reduce his strength. Condensed blood beast. This was a suppression of cultivation level. I'm already standing at the 3rd level of the blood transformation tier, and you actually want to fight me to a tie. Should I say that your courage is commendable, or should I say that you're stupid? Lien Shuarong shook her head. Ling Han chuckled upon seeing this. The gulf between them was far too great. Then how far is the gap between me and the 1st level of the blood transformation tier? He asked. Lien Shuarong pondered for a moment, then said, "In the 1st level of the blood transformation tier, power tier starts from 100,000 kilograms, and your current power has definitely reached 100,000 kilograms. It is not the slightest bit inferior to a newly advanced blood transformation tier. In fact, it has even surpassed it. However, once you have advanced into the blood transformation tier, one would be able to boil his blood and burst out with 2 to 3 times the usual power. This is an advantage that you cannot hope to attain." Ling Han nodded. Even if he only had 100,000 kilograms of strength, if he could increase it by 2 to 3 times, reaching 200,000 kilograms or even 300,000 kilograms of strength, just how terrifying would that be? This wasn't the overlapping of power. Just like a 7 meridians, even if he could overlap 10 layers of power, would he be able to withstand a punch from a 10 meridians? This was the advantage in terms of cultivation level. In essence, this was a crushing advantage. However, boiling blood also has a time limit, no more than 10 minutes. Then it would need at least 5 to 6 hours to calm down, and those who need longer may even need a day, depending on the individual, Lien Shuarong said. So if you can avoid these 10 minutes or so of a power burst, then it would not be difficult for you to match or even defeat a blood transformation tier. Ling Han nodded. Unless his power could be further increased, would he be able to withstand the explosive power of 200,000 kilograms or even 300,000 kilograms? He would only be crushed into dust. No one had made it a rule that if one defeated an enemy, they had to suppress them head-on. Using one's strengths and avoiding one's weaknesses was the way to go. How exactly do you cultivate? Lien Shuarong was curious. I know that a great many prodigies can break through the limit of 50,000 kilograms of strength at the peak of 12 meridians. But even Tuoba Tianhuang only seems to have about 75,000 kilograms of strength. Compared to you. She shook her head. This gap was really too obvious. Ling Han's expression became solemn. He really could not underestimate the people of this world. Tuoba Tianhuang could be called the strongest of the younger generation, and was even acclaimed as an extraordinary prodigy that would only appear once every 100 years. He was indeed very awesome. He chuckled. I don't know either. I'm just cultivating like usual. Regarding the matter of the extraordinary 8 meridians, he definitely couldn't tell anyone. Lien Shuarong didn't think about this either. She only thought that Ling Han was born with extraordinary talent, and the pressure-bearing ability of his meridians far surpassed that of ordinary people. He could allow power to surge out at a terrifying speed, and his explosive power was astonishing. This was something that others could not envy, no matter what. By the looks of it, you really might be able to get the first place in this martial arts competition, she said. Then, Her expression became very strange. Previously, when Ling Han found out about the martial arts tournament, he had asked what the prize for the first place was. At the time, she had thought that Ling Han was dreaming, but now that she thought about it, could it be that this guy had long since known that his strength could improve so rapidly? Or was it that this guy was too shameless and had soaring self-confidence? Go! Fight for first place, and also make our Xianqing banner proud. The day after tomorrow, I will bring people to cheer you on. Lian Xuerong waved her hand. Ling Han hurriedly left. He was really afraid that Lian Xuerong would cancel his leave and make him return to the army from tomorrow onwards. After he left the base camp, he did not directly return to the city. Instead, he began to practice in a desolate neighborhood. He wanted to know his maximum battle prowess. The limit of power he could release was 9 meters. This didn't increase by much. Previously, it was already 6 meters. He didn't expect his power to increase so much, but the distance didn't increase by much. Additionally, in the case of overlapping layers of power, it was 15 layers. This was only under normal circumstances. If he channeled the brother monkey cultivation technique, he could attain 20 layers. Even if it's a blood transformation tier cultivator whose blood is boiling, as long as I avoid a head-on confrontation and deliver 20 layers of power, I don't believe that there is anyone I won't be able to defeat, Ling Han murmured. His battle prowess limit was equivalent to 20 blood transformation tier. First change cultivators attacking at the same time. Who at the same cultivation level could block that? He returned to his quarters and began to anticipate what kind of rewards he would obtain in the martial arts tournament that would be held 2 days later. A day later, he received an invitation, which was sent out by the city lord's residence. As it turned out, the day after tomorrow was the 18th birthday of the young miss of the city lord residence. Since I've received an invitation, what kind of birthday gift should I prepare? Ling Han rubbed his chin. He couldn't go empty-handed, right? I'll take a look at pill recipes. What women care about the most is naturally looks, especially beautiful women. The lifespan of the people in this world is extremely short, so their appearances also age easily. In that case, the effects should be quite good if I give you an everlasting youth pill. All right, let's go to the online platform and see if there are any pill recipes like this. Ling Han immediately did as he said. He opened the optical computer and began searching. Chapter 3182. 3182 Everlasting Youth Pill. Chapter 3182. 3182 Everlasting Youth Pill. 3182 Everlasting Youth Pill. Everlasting Youth Pill was the favorite of women, especially beautiful women, who didn't want to preserve their most beautiful side forever. Ling Han soon saw the information about Everlasting Youth Pill on the trading platform. Of course, it wasn't a completed pill, but an incomplete recipe. In the last era of civilization, there was indeed something like the Everlasting Youth Pill. However, with the destruction of the civilization, the recipe for the Everlasting Youth Pill had also been destroyed and had not been completely passed on to this day. On this pill recipe, there was only an introduction to the effects of Everlasting Youth Pill, as well as the color and smell of the completed pill, and the method of assessing its quality. As for the specific ingredients needed, a corner of the page was missing. There wasn't much missing. At most, there were 4 medicinal ingredients missing. However, no matter how the alchemists of the modern era studied it, they were still unable to complete it. Fuck! Even the incomplete recipe has to be sold for 10,000 Dark North coins. Do you really think money comes from the wind? Ling Han looked at the transaction information and couldn't help but grit his teeth. However, only one person had made the deal, so Ling Han could only accept it and bid on the pill recipe. What could be seen on this page was only the introduction to Everlasting Youth Pill's functions, and below it were a great many messages, most of which were left by females, begging some grandmaster to repair this pill recipe for the benefit of the world. After Ling Han paid, it wasn't long before the complete pill recipe appeared before him. He scanned the ingredients, then went to find out the specific uses of each ingredient. Then he began to ponder. In the Genesis world, everlasting youth pills also existed, so what Ling Han had to do was very simple. He had to make a comparison between the two, and from there, find what was on the missing corner of the page. After only half a day, Ling Han murmured, "I have 3 options, but I don't know which one is the most correct." He immediately went to buy medicinal ingredients, then began to concoct alchemical pills. The Everlasting Youth pill had very low requirements for formations, so it was very easily matched. Ling Han released his spiritual power and activated the formations. Then his spiritual power transformed into a hand that threw one medicinal ingredient after another into the formations. Using his spiritual power to grab medicinal ingredients would further decrease the impurities. No matter what, his hands would eventually be stained with something, but in the Genesis world, Ling Han's strength was too strong, so his hands naturally wouldn't be touched by the slightest bit of dust, so it didn't matter. Thus, Ling Han was gradually developing the habit of using his spiritual power to grab medicinal ingredients now. This was only an elementary-level alchemical pill and was very easy to concoct. 2 hours later, Ling Han succeeded with a single attempt. Let's try the other 2 options. He also concocted the Everlasting Youth pill that corresponded to the other 2 options, totaling 14 pills. He analyzed the 3 types of Everlasting Youth pills one by one. With the Alchemy Emperor's strength, he immediately made a judgment. The Everlasting Youth pill that he refined from the second method would have the best effects. The effects of the other 2 types are about 3 years, but this one is 5 years. Furthermore, it can also make one's skin glow. Ling Han nodded and resolutely threw away the inferior goods. How could the Alchemy Emperor sell inferior goods? This should also be able to sell for a high price. I'll go find Mo Guohao and give him the pill recipe as well. I'll take a direct share of the profits, which will save me some energy. Otherwise, with more and more alchemical pills that I have to refine, how will I be able to spare the time to concoct this? It doesn't matter if I earn less. The fundamental purpose of my alchemy isn't for money, but to increase my strength and make preparations for launching and the others after they come out. Ling Han made a trip to Mercy Medicine Hall. It was really coincidental. He had just arrived at the entrance when he saw Zhong Yangbi walk out from within. The other party also discovered him at the same time, and his eyes immediately became fierce, as if he wanted nothing more than to devour him. "Ling Han!" he forced out through gritted teeth. Ling Han acted as if he had not heard anything. He entered into the pharmacy and directly went up to the 2nd floor. Mo Guohao had long since instructed the staff that Ling Han could come and go freely here. He was ostentatiously ignored. Zhong Yangbi clenched his fists, filled with fury. He really couldn't figure out why his master would be so polite to the deputy captain of Xianqing Banner. Wasn't it because that he was just a little better at fighting? But no matter how good he was at fighting, how could he compare to Tuoba Tianhuang? "There's no way I'm going to swallow this," he thought. How could Ling Han possibly care? He went up to the 2nd floor and entered Mo Guohao's study. Mo Guohao just happened to be drinking tea after going through his accounts. "Young friend Ling, how come you have the time to come and play today?" Mo Guohao asked smilingly. He knew that Ling Han was an alchemy mania. Otherwise, there was absolutely no way he could have concocted 900 meridian exploration pills in a single week. He was practically like a maniac. Speaking of which, he still didn't understand how Ling Han had managed to concoct so many meridian exploration pills. This was because even if he had a 100% success rate and concocted them 24 hours a day, there was still far from enough time. Ling Han took out a bottle of alchemical pills and placed it on the table. He said, "This is Everlasting Youth pill." Pooh! The pitiful Mo Guohao had just taken a sip of tea, yet all of a sudden spluttered out, causing him to cough endlessly. Was this for real? Young friend, you are really going to defy the heavens. He hurriedly grabbed the pill bottle, opened it, and poured out a pill to carefully observe. Regarding Ling Han's natural talent in alchemy, aside from feeling rueful, he had nothing else to say. After a while, Emo Guahao revealed a shocked expression and said, "This is indeed everlasting youth pill. It completely matches the description on the pill recipe. This smell, this color," and he pinched a bit, then nodded. "And this smell, after ingesting it, there is a kind of vitality factor. He was even more stunned. There is actually a sliver of whitening effect. This wasn't just the everlasting youth pill. It was practically the whitening everlasting youth pill. Young friend." His face was filled with excitement. The modifications to the Meridian Exploration pill and the Mystical Power pill benefits the nation and the people, enough to allow your name to be remembered for 100 lifetimes. However, the completion of the Everlasting Youth pill can truly bring you mountains of gold and silver. Oh, does the Everlasting Youth pill have such great effects? Ling Han asked with a smile. This is not a question of whether one's abilities would improve or not, but rather a question of how much a woman would be willing to pay for this item. Emo Guahao was extremely rueful. Though the main force in this world for making money is men, the main force for spending money is women, and having one's youth last forever is every woman's dream. For the sake of your dream, how much are you willing to pay? He countered Ling Han's question. To the point of bankruptcy, Ling Han said. He was speaking the truth. Just look, he had spent more than 10 million without batting an eyelid. Wasn't it all for the sake of speeding up his cultivation? That's right, Emo Guahao said with a smile. Thus, even if Everlasting Youth pills are sold for 100,000 each, I guarantee that the supply will not be able to meet the demand. No matter how large the quantity, there is no need to worry about not being able to sell. Ling Han nodded and said, I want to gift this pill recipe to you. In the future, I'll take 10% off the profit of every Everlasting Youth pill that you sell. Hiss! Emo Guahao looked at Ling Han in shock. He had just analyzed with Ling Han how popular Everlasting Youth pill would be. But in the next turn, Ling Han was willing to part with the pill recipe and only take 10% of the profits. A good person. No, this was so good that he had practically become an idiot. Chapter 30-183 3,183 Gifting Pill Recipes. Chapter 30-183 3,183 Gifting Pill Recipes. 3183 Gifting Pill Recipes. Young friend, are you really willing to give the pill recipe to me? Even with Emo Guahao's personality, he still couldn't control himself, his heart trembling madly. Ling Han was nonchalant. This kind of low-level alchemical pill could actually only earn some money from those at the lower ranks to satisfy his present cultivation needs. You see, if he really reached the blood transformation tier, or even a higher cultivation level, could money still buy the ingredients he needed? Impossible. When one had reached a certain height, it would definitely be an item exchange, a treasure exchanged for another treasure. Not only the Everlasting Youth pill, but also the modified version of the Mystical Power pill and the Meridian Exploration pill. The conditions are all the same, Ling Han said. Emo Guahao was already numb with shock. No, he corrected his previous assessment of Ling Han. This was not a good person, nor was he an idiot, but rather a saint. That's right, he was definitely a saint. He was filled with integrity. No, 10% is really too little, at least 50%. After Emo Guahao came back to his senses, he hurriedly said with a serious expression, he only had to obtain any one pill recipe, and he would have the confidence to become extremely wealthy. Gathering all 3 pill recipes, the seat that belonged to the richest man of the Dark North Nation would be beckoning at him. You will be in charge of skill, cost, and manpower. I have only offered the pill recipe, so 10% is enough, Ling Han said with a smile. No, 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 40%, then 40%. Mo Guahao insisted. If outsiders saw this, they would definitely call them two idiots. Wasn't it? There was actually someone who was willing to sacrifice their profits for nothing. What else could it be but an idiot? In the end, after much persuasion, Mo Guahao finally managed to convince Ling Han to accept the proposal of 30% share of the profits, which made him sigh in relief. It wasn't that he didn't want to earn money, but that Ling Han had too much room for development. In future, he would definitely become a big shot in alchemy. At that time, if word got out that he had taken advantage of Ling Han, then everyone would be able to drown him to death just by spitting at him. Being a merchant was naturally beneficial, but one's heart couldn't be black. Ling Han gave the 3 pill recipes to Mo Guahao and told him to immediately advertise the everlasting youth pill. However, the actual sale date was set for next month. Although Mo Guahao didn't understand, in his heart, Ling Han had already leaped to the level of a god, so he naturally agreed. Regarding Ling Han, he was completely impressed. Even though he was a middle-level alchemist and was superior to Ling Han, unknowingly he had already placed himself in a lower position. For some people, prodigious talent overflowed and could not be measured by age. Ling Han returned in satisfaction. Now he didn't have to spend time on these 3 types of alchemical pills. Instead, he could study more profound pill recipes. Unfortunately, his spiritual power was still not up to standard, and he was unable to construct the middle-level formations. He was still unable to set up that killing formation. In fact, he was not even able to create a formation foundation. Huan Shui, how's your cultivation going? Ling Han called his little handmaiden over. She had also gotten some benefits from the rich man's formation previously. Young master, Huan Shui is now in 8 meridians, the little female attendant said excitedly. All right, try to reach 12 meridians as soon as possible, Ling Han nodded. Huan Shui will definitely work hard. The little female attendant clenched her fists tightly, filled with motivation. She had a wish, and that was to obtain powerful strength so that she could be by Ling Han's side. Then she would be able to stay by Ling Han's side for the rest of her life. Otherwise, she would always worry that she would be abandoned one day. The little handmaiden continued to cultivate with the spirit-gathering formation, while Ling Han sensed the 3rd extraordinary meridian. Every minute of cultivation time was precious. However, the more meridians that were opened, the more difficult it would be to take another step further. By midnight, Ling Han still did not succeed, so he could only give up and go to bed. Pum! Suddenly, a light sound woke Ling Han up. He raised his upper body, and his spiritual power surged. It had already surged into the courtyard, and clearly sensed the 2 figures. It was one of them who had shot out a punch, breaking through the psychedelic formation in the courtyard. Terrifying blood surged all over his body, and he could sense it very clearly. Being able to forcibly break through this psychedelic formation with brute force only meant one thing: this person was a blood transformation tier cultivator, and added with his boiling blood, there was no need to doubt it at all. These 2 people were masked in black robes and held swords that shone brightly in their hands, exuding a sinister air. Assassins, Ling Han immediately thought. Previously, 2 had come, and in the end, one had been killed by the little female attendant, scaring the other away. He had not thought that so long had passed, and the latter would make a comeback. This time, an elite of the blood transformation tier had been mobilized. Head-on confrontation or retreat? Ling Han only had a single thought before deciding to face this attack head-on. Pung! He directly broke open the window and stood in the courtyard. Blood surged. This was only the 1st cultivation level of a blood transformation tier elite, so he wasn't afraid of a battle. If it was a condensed blood pillar or even condensed blood beast, he would definitely run away immediately with his little female attendant. Such good senses, a black-robed man said. He chuckled coldly. However, in the end, you are only a meridian opening tier elite. Old Sue, you stand guard. If the girl comes out, kill her, and I will deal with this brat. All right. The other black-robed man nodded. Their mission was very simple, and that was to kill Ling Han. As for Huan Shui, as long as it did not affect them, they would not kill her. That was because they would be collecting money if they killed someone. How could they kill someone for nothing if they were not going to be paid for it? Ling Han smiled calmly. Who sent you? You're already close to death. So what's the point of asking so many questions? The assassin in black looked at Ling Han balefully. All right, if you must know, my name is Zhang San. I'm Li Si, the other man in black said with a chuckle. Ling Han shook his head and said, I'll inscribe these two names on your tombstones. Die. Zhang San charged over, his sword sweeping out like a rainbow. Ling Han clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. Pum! With the release of his power, Ling Han was unafraid of the sharpness of his weapon. With a loud bang, Ling Han's figure retreated, but Zhang San also took a few steps back, his boiling blood wavering. What? Li Si saw this, and couldn't help but look shocked. Ling Han was clearly only a meridian opening tier elite, so how could he rival a blood transformation tier elite? Though they were not the best of the blood transformation tier elites, there were only a total of 7 blood transformation tier assassins from hell. Under the suppression of a major cultivation level, in terms of power, Ling Han only had a slight disadvantage. Hiss! Zhang San was also stunned. Fuck, he had been screwed over by the intelligence again. Previously, it was said that Ling Han only possessed 10 meridians. In the end, the organization sent out 2 silver plate assassins with 12 meridians, yet they were killed and defeated by a woman. They only managed to escape after using a rare treasure. Now they sent out 2 elites of first change blood transformation tier, and in the end a man ran out, and his strength was unbelievable. Could it be that the assassination mission was just a foil, and the purpose was to screw over their hell organization? Again, Zhang San made a comeback, his sword soaring into the sky. After exchanging a blow, Ling Han was already confident. He laughed loudly and charged toward Zhang San. Pum! 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 The two of them exchanged blows. Though Ling Han's power was slightly inferior, it wasn't by much. They exchanged blows. Li Si was completely speechless. This was too ridiculous.